All right, let's get started. My warm welcome from the School of Business and Economics. Very good time of the day, wherever you are and whenever you are. I'm alive from really a cellar of the Maastricht University, and today we have the second session of the e-conference on green cities. So it's my privilege to host this conference today here in School of Business and Economics. I could have told you a lot about myself, about the school, but I would rather spend a couple of minutes telling about you, about the consortium and about the partners. So it's actually, I had really great experiences last year, starting from September on. A lot of people joined the consortium, so there are 50 plus partners, and that was truly amazing experience, actually gathering twice, 3 times a week on the voluntary basis with all of you, with such nice discussions. That was incredible, and I'm super glad that even after the submission, we continue gathering and we continue discussing these nice topics. And today we have actually great keynote speaker and the panel discussants. I'm not borrowing more time, so I'm just expressing, well, my great feelings to you. And I'm expressing my eager to hear, to learn new things from you. As a keynote speaker today, we have, well, oh, sorry. So as a keynote speaker today, we have Thomas Diaz from Fab Academy. And right after this plenary talk, we will have quite some discussions led by 3 experts in the fields. So we have Sophie de Broo, we have Vadim Kramer and Jeremy Millard. All of these people I perfectly remember from the times of the gatherings, and these are actually the people who joined the consortium from the very, very beginning on. And well, let's get started. Burak, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Alex. I would like to also welcome everybody for the second series of Climate Neutral Cities Conference with the Sustainable Wednesdays hashtag. What we would like to do now is that introduce you our keynote lecturer, Thomas Diaz, from Fablab Barcelona. And he will talk today about designing emergent futures for productive bioregions. And then this will be followed up by a very lively panel discussion on the topic, around the topic by Sophie de Broo, Vadim Kramer, and Jeremy Millard. I would like to keep it short and give the floor to Thomas Diaz. Thomas, over to you.
Thank you, Burak. Just testing that you can hear me. You just have to know that. Okay, fantastic. Thank you for the introduction. Also, thank you, Jeremy, for the invitation and the entire team. It's a pleasure to be connected with you again. As been said, well, as you see, I've been introduced with different affiliations because I have different hats. I am originally from Venezuela, where I did my degree in urban studies. I ended up in Barcelona, where I jumped into the world of digital fabrication, and I am now in Indonesia, starting a new adventure, hopefully related with design, technology, as well with urbanism and digital fabrication. But I'm going to share my screen in order to give you a 20-minute presentation, as far as I know, in which I will try to introduce you to the work I am involved with, especially from Fablab Barcelona, as well as from the Fab City Global Initiative. So I hope you can see my screen. As I said before, I have multiple hats. One, maybe the main one that I'm wearing now is the Fab City. But you can find me in any almost every social network as Thomas Diaz. I've been the director of Fablab Barcelona. I'm still are since 2007. Starting the Fablab Barcelona was the first Fab Lab in the European Union. At the Institute for Advanced Architecture of Catalonia, where I also direct the Master in Design for Emergent Futures. I am a founding partner of the Fab City Global Initiative, and I am also a founding partner of the Meaningful Design Group that is based here in Indonesia, alongside with local partners, Indonesian partners. So I'm interested on different topics, especially understanding in the moment in which we are, in which especially the polarization of views. Also to kind of evolve from the colonial Western-centric views, especially the ownership of truth. How we move also from the centralized production paradigm, how we also are able to deal with the information obesity in which we live today, how we also can escape from the normalization of the toxic food chain system in our everyday life. The centralized production is duplicated, apologies for that. But also, something that we cannot escape as well is the climate emergency. These are topics, again, I'm interested in discussing, and I will be showing you some examples in which we're doing tiny efforts, I would say, small drops in the ocean to try to work with them. Of course, the issue with COVID-19, but also what is becoming like a permanent pandemic way of living. The moment in which we are also produces this extreme oscillation of reality. You might be experiencing some of that as well. And what is going to look like this new normal that every talks about. So it's a lot of things. I don't want to scare you, and I want to jump directly into maybe a series of provocations, again, in order to produce some discussion and some debate. So technology has been always around us, and if you allow me, I will jump directly on how technology has been influencing the urban life. One of the big technologies that transformed inhabitation in cities was the horse, which was the producer of the first urban conference when experts were discussing what we do with the horse manure, right? We evolved from horse to cars. Cars were a great invention. They don't only solve an issue of mobility, but introduce a new model of production, and is causing now not only the consequences associated with the industrial model, but also, as we see, cholesterol, especially in Western cities, but also the same Western model has been penetrating the rest of the world. And then, I'm doing like a big shifts here, jumping from the horse to the private car to the mobile phone or the smartphone, and how are these key technologies that have transformed cities. We see how phones are transforming mobility, of course, as well, but transforming every other thing. And I will jump into that a little bit later. These shared mobility schemes, they hide a lot of issues behind, as many of the things that we see. This is not only happening in China, but it's also happening in San Francisco with the shared mobility schemes and so on. But as we can see, technologies produce consequences, sometimes unintended consequences, like producing influencers like Kim Kardashian, which are part of for the good and for the bad of our current culture. So we are today in a moment in which the global pandemic, which a couple of years ago we would not imagine, is part of a series of problems, of a series of it's part of a series of convergence of problems that are transforming the way in which reality changes, as I was saying before. This is from Stuart Brand. If you're not familiar with him, he's one of the founders of the Whole Earth Catalog, one of the foundational publications for the internet and open source movements and counterculture. But with this space layering, what we're seeing is that things that we were used to predict more clearly, or like the changes of nature, are being transformed by the influence of man, by the use of the way in which we are relating ourselves with nature. Hence, reality is evolving and transforming quickly as we use to be able to predict. So inside our lab, we call these weak signals. And they are not only the ones that I showed, but many others are emerging, and they're becoming like a constellation of these very, very complex problems to solve. And it seemed like a lot of us are really lost and trying to find out what to do with them. So this is the idea of weak signals. I think that we have to put them together also with other type of convergence. Means like we're seeing now like the different crises are coming together. I think I mentioned some of these, but also technologies are converging as well. And these are moments that have been produced at different times of history. One of the key moments of convergence was the 15th century, the invention of the printing press, but also the occupation of the East and Western Indias by Europe was part of that, the transformation of the world. Also the beginning of the 20th century, the two world wars, but also the invention of wireless communications, polymer-based plastics, or the assembly line, as I mentioned before. And we are yet to see what's going to produce not only these technologies associated with computation machines, but also biotechnologies and the manipulation of nature that we are able to do now. But these moments of convergence is a bit different, in my opinion. We are having unprecedented access to tools, but also access to information. Access to tools, by the way, was the subtitle of the whole Earth Catalog publication, as I mentioned before. And a big player of this, of course, are the supercomputers, hyperconnected, that we have in our pockets, which allow us not only to consume information, but also to produce it. High or lower quality, we are able to produce images, videos, sounds. We're able to share it with the world and create effects on it, right? This is how computers look 50 years ago or more, 70 years ago, maybe. This is how probably the future of fabrication looks today, right? What I'm showing you is a digital fabrication laboratory that is called the Fablab, a project started by accident from the Center for Bits and Atoms at MIT. When put together, when Neil Gershenfeld and colleagues put together an inventory of different equipment that could help people to make almost anything, especially in remote areas, in order to have access to the production of technology when needed, especially in rural areas, but that had become unintentionally, as I said before, in a global network. Just for you to have an idea, when we opened Fablab Barcelona in 2007, there were about 10 Fab Labs in the world. Nowadays, there are over 2,000 Fab Labs in the world. And all these labs, they share more or less the same equipment, generally speaking. They are connected with different programs and classes. And we are also a network and a community. So this means that having access to this type of tools change completely the way in which we learn, right? We're not only seeing distance learning or learning through the computer as one of the things that is now taking more relevance due to the pandemic, but also having access to tools that allows you to turn bits of information into atoms changes also the way in which we learn. And this is something that Neil Gershenfeld, accidental father of Fab Labs, but also professor of the How to Make Almost Anything class, was teaching about 20 years ago at MIT. Problem, or one of the limitations of this class, which started to become more populated, is that you had to be an MIT student, which is a university that is very difficult to enter, difficult to maintain. For those that you have been at MIT, you probably see in the hallways different notes of psychological assistance to students for suicide rates, but somehow limited to maybe a couple dozens of people. With the existence of Fab Labs, we basically can think about the world as a distributed campus where this same class that is being taught at MIT can happen in all of these labs. This is the Fab Academy, a program that we created back in 2008, and it's still running. The Fab Academy provides the knowledge for these students to learn in their, in their locations, and without having to go to Cambridge or to Boston. They have MIT type of education, and they are able to prototype and test the technologies that they learn in every week, applied into projects that can range from, this is one of the projects I've been involved with, and a project that I founded, which is Smart Citizen, low-cost sensor device to measure pollution in cities, but more importantly, to give citizens the power to capture data and share it against the smart city. Devices to produce food, but also not projects that are around devices, but the need of forming communities around the production of food using technology, as this project became a small cooperative called Aqua Pioneers. The open source Beehive project, again, developed by students of Fablab Academy in Barcelona, but then became a company established in the United States, now selling sensors and also distributing open source knowledge about beekeeping and the data that the bees produce inside, captured by a sensor in order to understand what is causing the colony collapse disorder. Low-cost drones, wine-making technologies. I'm going to skip this. This is a wine that I made. Actually, I have to pick it up in Barcelona at some point. To other type of scale of things, like designing and making an entire restaurant that is open source. You can go have lunch or dinner, and you can download the files on how the restaurant is made, but also the menu of the restaurant. And this is associated with the concept of the owners. They wanted to make a restaurant that is based on open and honest food, but also the restaurant itself is open and honest, supposedly. But then experimented with the same restaurant, we have used their waste in order to test it in the development of materials to create products out of the organic resources that are generated in neighborhoods. And this is probably, part of the inventory of Fab Labs that is going to join, the ability to create, to cultivate materials and to experiment with biology, as I said before, in order to be able to imagine and test how our material ecology can evolve from oil-based materials, as I said before. So the way in which we have access to technology changed the way in which we learn, but also changed the way in which we design, right? In your left hand, you will see how the linear model that is quite connected with the industrial paradigm, in which there is a centralized modes of production. There are centralized modes of production limited to few. Therefore, you have to protect your creations. IP is basically connected. The IP paradigm is connected to the way in which we produce. But if anyone can have access to make anything anywhere in the world, then basically IP enters in challenge, right? And the question is why we're going to protect the recipes of how we make things if we can make it anywhere. It's like if you want to put an IP on the making of pizzas around the world, right? So the existing paradigm of production that I think that we are starting to see is flaws. I mean, not only related with the impact that it creates in the environment, but also how fragile are communities to the disruption of supply chains. The pandemic has disrupted the supply chains. A boat or a container ship stuck in the Suez Canal also can paralyze the global supply of things, at least a small percentage, I know. But we are really, as I said before, we don't know which are the impacts that we're generating in the environment. And also, we are also seeing more and more the political tensions in the world can disrupt suddenly, the supply of medicines or the supply of very basic things that need to arrive to your home. But then before arriving to your home, they are located in this type of warehouses. This is one of the Amazon's warehouses, needless to say, with people working in very poor conditions, as maybe some of you have read. So we have all this model of exploitation and extraction of materials, energy, and labor that's pretty much colonial, but we keep using it, just updating it every now and then with a new technology. So the question is like how we evolve to a distributed model. Like what's the promise of the internet? Unfortunately, being captured by the capacity of computation of big companies and the ability to process information very fast and taking advantage of that very nature of the internet. The question is if we're gonna keep evolving the same model of accumulation and exploitation or extraction, just using new technologies. And that's one of the risks that this distributed network of fabrication has. But also one of the potentials is to not only limit the projects or products that can be done at small scale in labs, but also connecting with complementary scales at the bioregional level, complementary infrastructure, for local manufacturing. This is one of the efforts we're doing with a project that started in Scotland, but we are developing in other regions in order to understand which are the capacities that these regions have to produce locally using existing industry, but also, as you can imagine, pushing an agenda towards a more distributed model, but also towards understanding new materials ecologies and new infrastructures in cities and regions, as I said before. Because if you look at the way in which infrastructure has been developed, and I think I have like 5 minutes or something like that. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is that correct?
Oh, please go ahead. We have started. We were expecting some technical hiccups, so please take time. Another 7 minutes, 8 minutes. It's good.
Oh, fantastic! Thank you so much, Burak. Okay.
Our pleasure.
So if you look at the kind of infrastructure that is associated with the current industrial model, you can easily understand why we build bridges, highways, railways, airports, planes, trains, cars, trucks that allow us to move atoms around the world. So you move people, but also you move materials, from the coltan that you take from the Congo, that you ship to India, to China, turn it into your super advanced phone that changes every year, to any other type of materials, as stupid as shrimps as well. I don't know if you know about the case of the shrimps that are cultivated in the UK, and they're sent to Thailand to take the skin off with cheap labor. They're shipped back to the UK to put in your cocktails. But what my point here is the way in which we mobilize materials need a specific type of infrastructure, right? And associated with this type of infrastructure, as I said before, there is the energy needed to move these materials. Then it's very easy to understand why there are such conflicts in places where there are higher resources of energy, or where there are higher resources of a specific material that is part of the desire of the economy in that moment. So I'm in Indonesia, and in the 16th century, something that was more precious than oil at the moment was nutmeg. And the big war of occupation was around the exploitation of nutmeg, and basically the British and the Dutch really had a very bad time together in order to control the supply of nutmeg to Europe. Even such a huge fight that I don't know if you're familiar with, but the British own an island here in the north of Indonesia. It's called the Rung Island. Forget me if the name, if not, is correct. But it was where the best nutmeg was produced, and the Dutch owned New Amsterdam, and the Dutch traded with the British the island of Rung from New Amsterdam, and New Amsterdam nowadays is New York, is Manhattan. So that's how important was the control of the most desired resources. At the moment, probably in the second half of the 20th century, has been oil. I am from Venezuela, and I have seen the destruction of a country just for the fight of controlling a resource, right? This resource of energy in this case. So again, my whole point, and trying not to confuse you, is to understand that we are advocating for understanding that we need different type of infrastructure for a 21st century economy that prioritizes the circulation of materials at the local level and the circulation of information at the global level. This means that we are able to understand that cities and bioregions have a material capacity and infrastructure to turn these materials into the necessities that the population have, but then we can share the recipes globally without the need of using massive amount of transportations of plastic cups or the shrimps itself. I've been testing this at different scales. In Barcelona, we are Fablab Barcelona, which is the lab that has been advocating for Fab City since the beginning. We are located in an all-industrial area where it's used to call the Catalan Manchester. But as in many other cities, industry look for better conditions, especially better or access to cheaper costs to manufacture associated with labor and energy, as I said before. So as it happened in Barcelona, but other many cities, industries left, and the occupation of these neighborhoods had been happening differently. More lately, real estate has been taking over and finding great opportunities in these all industrial neighborhoods. In our case, we have seen how in Poblenou, in Barcelona, there is a organic network of creative spaces related with either design, technology, circular economy, manufacturing that had been evolving in the neighborhood. We mapped them, and we tried to create a network in order to understand that this could become a prototype for this ideal of a city that can produce locally. But also we were able to lobby with the local government in order to turn digital fabrication infrastructure as a public service. In this case, the city of Barcelona has right now 5 public fab labs funded by the city council that operate similarly to a public library. So it's not a library just to access to knowledge, but also a library to learn how to turn that knowledge into making skills. And this is happening at the moment in Barcelona, where other signs, not only related with these public libraries or Fablab Barcelona, but also manufacturing hubs that are being set up by large companies and other private initiatives are turning Barcelona in an interesting case to understand the concentration of the future of or the potential future of manufacturing. For instance, the headquarters of 3D printing globally of HP is located in the metropolitan area of Barcelona. So finally, as you can imagine, what we're looking is from that experience that we had been developing inside a small lab with machines where geeks make things. We can make useless robots, but we can also develop micro generation devices or micro energy generation devices or tools to produce food in cities. We're trying to see how we can scale up, how the current crisis can become an opportunity to start to understand how a new localism can emerge around local production. And especially how we can look at urbanization as something that can be productive and positive and not being just like a big monster that is sucking materials and resources around the world. I haven't touched the topic of how construction is affecting our natural systems, especially the need of sand for concrete, and the amount of waste that construction generates, and the current materials, apart from the concrete, that is depending upon. So Fab City, which is not only mixing Fab Labs with cities and trying just to make things that serve to the city, is actually looking for a larger vision. It's trying to understand how we can evolve from the current industrial revolution that basically is based on this global access to resources, the control of them, the control of the means of production, the control of the logistics, the control of the energy that moves those, in order to supply the centers of consumption with things cities consume stuff and produce trash. That's the product in trash out model. And what we're advocating is how we can develop a model in which, as I said before, fabrication happens locally, but information travels globally. We convinced in July 2014 to the mayor of Barcelona that he should say in public that in 40 years, Barcelona will produce almost everything it consumes locally. And he did. This was at the end of the Fablab conference back in Barcelona. That's Neil Gershenfeld, myself, and the former mayor of Barcelona at the moment. We started a countdown, which is still going. If you go to fab.city, is our website, you will see that the clock is ticking. And that reminds us, like, since we have 33 years left, since the moment that we launched this, there are already 7 years that have happened. But during these years, we have been able to also to convince, or not even convincing, but with this, we kind of we started to have the curiosity of other cities to join this network, and being Barcelona the first one, we have now 38 cities that are part of this. I can talk more about different things, but I think like I will try to make use of the quality of your time. I think like I shared the key points in which we're working. Just a couple of updates maybe to share before I finish. One is that we're organizing, we just recently started the Fab City Foundation with base in Estonia, using the e-residency program, allow us to have a distributed team around the world, in Colombia, Brazil, myself in Indonesia. And the Fab City Foundation got an interesting funding support from a US-based foundation that is helping us to develop what we call the Fab City Strata, or the full stack, that is going to allow us to organize all our research and also the actions that these 38 cities are going to develop in the next 33 years. And if you're, interested on knowing more, you can go and see how we got here, and basically by accessing to the Fab City book, which is available to read for free online. News about the in the coming months. So with that, I finish. Thank you, Burak, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Thomas. I would invite everybody to ask questions on the chat screen, and if you would be so kind enough, Thomas, to reply via the chat bar the questions. I, for one, have a lot, actually, being a maker myself and a big fan of the whole maker movement. Without further ado, I would like to invite Sophie de Broo, Professor Dr. Sophie de Broo, Scientific Director of Center for Big Data Statistics in Dutch Statistical Institute, and also Head of Methodology there, and also a Professor at Maastricht University. Sophie, we would love to hear your perspective now. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Burak. I've also prepared some slides, as everybody did last time. I didn't want to fall back. I'm not sure. I hope you, just a moment. I'll try to, because yesterday I had some problems, share a thing. Can you see this slide?
Yes, it works. Perfect.
A moment. Can you see this?
Yes, if you press, I think it will just do the full presentation. I don't know. Yeah.
Is this not full presentation for you?
It's not full presentation. It's also showing the next slide.
Yeah, we're saying the other is, we're seeing what you're supposed to see, and you're seeing what we are supposed to see.
I'm not quite sure.
I think if you go to the down in the options when it says monitor, from my Dutch, I can say that if you jump from the automatic, when it says no,
Sorry,
up in the right, it says monitor and it says automatic. If you drop down that menu, maybe you can select what you want to share first and what you want to share for yourself.
Is this not showing the full screen for the slide?
No, but if you choose on the upper right side, there is the choose of the monitor, and I think it is showing the second monitor instead of the presentation itself.
I really don't know how to, sorry.
But it's also okay like this. We just have a spoiler of the next slide that you're presenting. If you don't mind that, that's also okay.
But I think, Sophie, on your screen, I see down at the bottom, you haven't pressed the icon for screen show. If down below where the horses is, 3 icons over, I think it's presentation. You see, you're on the first one. It's the 4th one on the right, just beside the sliding bar. That's presentation mode you need to go to. Can you see down on your bottom right of your screen?
I see share screen. I go to panel, this one.
But
share.
Inside the PowerPoint presentation,
yes,
you have options down there. Look on the bottom right of the screen below NSI. Go straight down from NSI, and you see there are 4 icons in a row. Go to the 4th one and press that. Next 2 over. You were there. No, you were there. Go right, go right, go right.
No, I'm sorry. Burak, can somebody else start because I can't think anymore. Sorry.
Okay.
I'm gonna have to. Sorry. I really don't know what I'm doing wrong.
No, but it's actually okay. We just see one more slide ahead, and that's okay. If you just present vanaf begin, that's also fine. It's only a spoiler of the next slide, but there is nothing confidential and secretive.
But where I don't see what is this the monitor that I need to click? No.
I think this is okay like this.
Sorry, I'm.
If you send me your slides, I can also put it on the screen for you.
Maybe would somebody else be able to speak before me, because I need to sort something out. I had a problem yesterday too.
Sure. Then Jeremy, if you are willing to take over now and then put your commentary.
Yeah, okay. Can you?
That will be very lovely.
Can you see me?
Yes.
Okay, I've got 1 slide. I'm going to go straight to that. I hope I don't have the similar problem to Sophie, but I'm not so used to this as. Let me try. Okay, share screen. Multiple participants can share. No, okay, that's me. Just share screen, right? And then I just go to my 1 slide. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Right. I'm going to be a bit provocative. What's new? Following on I mean, I think Thomas's presentation was fantastic. I just wrote to him. I think the idea of the fabrication city is the most inspiring, but also practical vision I've heard in the last 10 years. And if I was younger, I'd get definitely involved. And sorry about the bad geography. I'm an English geographer, but I obviously need to know more about Latin American geography. That's an in-joke. I'm sorry about that. But I'm one of the people focusing on governance in the 2OC project. So I'm very interested in how we govern climate change and how we govern the city, and particularly the city and its bioregion. So I've been focusing a lot on water problems and flooding. There's been huge amounts of flooding in Europe over the last 5 years. It's getting worse. And I know I'm in danger of preaching to the experts in the Netherlands, But these are wicked problems, and they're widespread across Europe, and they've been getting worse, right? But they also provide a great exemplar for the governance of many other city challenges, in my view. So anyway, let's go ahead. I think we're the problem about flooding in cities is obviously a bioregional problem. A watershed problem. We need to think wider than the city itself. It may even be wider than the immediate region around it, of course, right? So this is posing new challenges and choices for local and national politicians. On the one hand, the example I'm looking at here is between building dikes and other grey infrastructures for flood defences, which has been, the sort of fallback position in many situations, or adopting relatively untested natural flood management programmes on the other, right? And there are governance issues involved in this. I mean, the former, the dike dilemma, as I call it, usually implies concrete structures in or near settlements that are easy to see and immediately reassuring, while the latter often means coercing upstream farmers and landowners to make space for flood ponds and that temporarily retain water and other water retention activities before it travels downstream, and to make sure it goes more slowly and regularly without causing damaging floods. This could involve relatively large-scale land use changes if rivers are allowed to follow their natural course. I'm an old physical geographer. I remember studying all these phenomena. This is 50 years ago now. and now they're coming back maybe to be looked at again much more intensely, I think. But there are clearly potential winners and losers here. In both scenarios, whether we go for dikes or whether we go for nature-based solutions in a sense, or a mixture of both, of course, right? There are consequences for the townscapes as well as the natural landscapes and ecosystems around them, and thus for land use management more generally, and many other local planning issues, both short and long term. This is often different costs and benefits for different stakeholders, of course, and this needs balancing. This is a governance issue. Let me just put up a couple of, if I can do it, yeah. Okay, if we look at dikes, for example, it's a physical man-made barrier. It's easy to see, cost, measure, control, normally under the control of one political authority. That's what makes it easy, with only one or few landowners involved. The effects are therefore often readily understood and seen and visible, and they are very politically attractive on that basis. Water retention in the countryside, in contrast, is subject to many unknown and difficult to measure factors, including multiple authorities and landowners, and landowner fragmentation, and this makes them politically and strategically complicated and risky. The problem is this semblance of certainty and security a dike can bring can be misleading, as it attracts growing human activity and settlement, thereby significantly increasing the potential damage of man-made problems in the future, including causing bigger floods and other problems which can be hugely damaging and costly, of course. So human construction in this context can be estimated based upon current and projected levels of activity and settlement, but they often fall short when these estimates no longer hold, and that is often changing as development gets underway and urban areas grow and change, of course, right? This is subject to human flaws and in technical, problems about leaks and erosion of the dike, which often happens. And I'm sure our Dutch colleagues can help us in this, but these are huge problems across Europe. And grey infrastructures also escalate climate problems caused by a clearing of land and diminishing nature's ability to self-regulate. I think that's an important issue. In contrast, evidence shows that water retention increases carbon capture, especially when existing ponds, wetlands, peat bogs, woodlands, all these different natural aspects, even if they're managed, but if we retain them, they can have a huge benefit. Natural constructions like this are much more flexible and have the capacity to adapt to changing circumstances. A natural water retention landscape will expand over time in density and geography if more water is collected, almost on its own, although it does, of course, need to be managed because it affects landowners and farming and other other non-city activities, of course. But the natural ecosystem is much more resilient to unforeseen changes. A dike may be an effective solution in the short term, but it can lead to greater disruption and cost in the longer term. So how these differences are taken into account in city governance, planning and decision making and financial investment, this is the big issue. The problem is a wicked one. Sorry to use that term, but I think it's a useful term here, and cannot be solved just from one stakeholder's perspective. I think that's the important issue. So finally, just a final thought here. Most large cities and many smaller settlements are built on or near rivers or along coastlines. I mean, this is global, not just in Europe. One important approach, which is what I've been talking about, is natural water retention measures. It's NWRM. And I think it's a promising option to mitigate flood risks. The problem is it's short term, of course, and involves multiple stakeholders, but it can reduce risk and provide additional ecosystem services, including increased biodiversity, recreational opportunities, et cetera, et cetera. Actually, on a quick aside, I don't like the word ecosystem services. The ecosystem is not servicing humans, it's providing ecosystem functions. And I think the idea that it's just servicing us, I think, can be a dangerous one, but that's just a hobby horse I have. But there's been lots of projects and trials have shown that a common characteristic of green infrastructure measures, they do claim more land than traditional methods, you know, the dike approach, the hard infrastructure approach. But most people accept they can be effective, but not much is known at the moment about why and how they work. So we do need more research on this. For example, in the Czech Republic, I should probably call it Czechia or Czechia now, these problems with the nature-based solutions systems are so significant that they have not adopted the natural water retention approach, but they have done in Austria. And here they have realized a longer-term solution which can have multiple benefits that address not just one problem at a time. They can mitigate flood and drought risk, enhance biodiversity and ecosystem functions, as well as provide green and recreational services for municipalities. As a result, in Austria, there's been a lot of collaboration upstream. I'm thinking about the Danube, but other watercourses as well, and downstream municipalities. It does provide a governance challenge in the form of compensation of payments from the latter to the former, which they're doing in Austria, to store water upstream, and compensation, of course, or at least assistance and incentives for upstream landowners is also important. All this requires governing the city bioregion as a whole, of course, and thinking long term. But we also get short-term benefits if we know how to do it right. I think we're still learning how to do this. And I think this example, does actually illustrate many of the governance and financial investment decisions, and even legal decisions we need to think about. And not to think of the city in isolation from its bioregion, of course, which is extremely important. Someone's mentioned food is something I'm working on as well, which is very important in this context. So that's my input for now. So thanks for that.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. I'd like to first ask if Sophie has solved the problem.
I think
are you ready?
Sorry. Yes, I think I've solved it. I'll give it another try.
Okay, the floor is yours then, Sophie.
Sorry? Can you see?
The floor is yours. Yes, perfect. Thank you.
All right, I had two monitors, so I was struggling with the two. Thank you. First of all, thanks to Thomas for this inspiring talk. I'm going to try to make some links to the previous speakers. Thanks, Burak, first of all, as well, for this fantastic organization and energy you have produced for this project. That's amazing to see. And finally, I have to thank Bert Kroeze because I've stolen some of his slides. That's our Deputy Director General. And today I would like to talk a little bit about the innovation we have done in the time of Corona at the National Statistical Office of the Netherlands and the lessons we can draw for 2OC. Is this going to the next slide? No. You see the next slide?
Yes.
Okay, Thomas was talking about horses, so I really wanted to make the connection with my horse. because he's there in the spring in the prairie and he fell in love with a mare of the same color. So I thought I'll make a link there. Okay, so what statistical officers are here for on this planet? Oh, this is really not, is to support evidence-based decision-making. Of course, we are here to address these policy questions and not just ask what is required, but also do the things that are required. And therefore, we also would like to optimize the discussion with the users. We see an increased need on several levels. Is firstly the timeliness of statistics. Secondly, the regional statistics at the local area level, and also the need for new indicators. We recently also submitted an ESA grant, a European Space Agency, on in monitoring the meadow birds, for example, based on Earth observation. So this is the kind of evolutions you see with statistical institutes very recently, and even more so on the occasion of the pandemic. And to give you a couple of examples of things we have done in our own statistical offices world in order to increase the timeliness is, for example, just mortality figures. They used to be produced 2 weekly, and that's just total mortality. And now we produce them weekly. And on top of that, we have produced estimated mortality so that we could see from the gap between the deaths that we saw and the estimated mortality using past figures, that there was a suspicion that this gap was due to COVID, of course. So these are processes that we have just made more efficient on the occasion of the pandemic. Can you actually see the slides that are moving? Because this is what was causing the problem yesterday. Yes? You see different slides, eh? Okay.
Yes.
Then we also try to produce quick insights into, for example, the consumer goods that were being bought, because from several years now, we are producing the consumer price index using scanner data and web scraping. So we don't go into the shops physically anymore. We just use these big data sources that we get from supermarkets, and we were able to have a quick insight into the type of products that are being sold in supermarkets. We call them hoarding. The Office for National Statistics was calling them anxiety goods that were being bought at the beginning of the pandemic. So very quick output, which is rather was not the tradition in statistical offices, if I may say so. We also looked at new data sources that would allow us to give a better reflection of what was actually happening in the economy. And so we saw that people were starting to buy much more using ideal online transactions instead of using PIN, which was traditionally used when you go to a physical shop. So you see clearly what's happening during the pandemic. And this ideal transaction data we have also acquired just at the beginning of the pandemic in order to be able to reflect these changes that were happening. So it was also an occasion to get access to more data, etc. The other thing we slightly changed, although we were also already busy doing that in the past before the pandemic, but during the pandemic even more so, is to use dashboards and different types of communication with the users. So CBS is also part of a think tank where socioeconomic crisis management, health, society, economy and mobility are being discussed, which are the indicators that are necessary during the pandemic. And we were able to come up with these quite interactive dashboards for users, for our users. So a lot of action during the pandemic in NSI's activities. We also had already taken new directions, and during the pandemic in the last year, this has accelerated, trying to use machine learning techniques to depict lots of societal changes. And one important activity was that we became part of the Dutch AI coalition, which is a public-private partnership which tries to improve AI in society, mainly with an economic goal, but also with a governmental aspect. So the democratic values, privacy, discrimination, facilitate data sharing, to also have an educational role. And and as you perhaps know, is that Statistics Netherlands is in effect really a data cross point of the Netherlands. We have a whole load of data sets, not just surveys, but a lot of admin sources, which we have access to. And of course, this even registered data offer a lot of potential for developing machine learning algorithms that are trained to calculate propensities to move, etc. So, important aspect of our activities is using the existing data sources that we have in-house. And as I said, an important evolution that we saw, and not just during the pandemic, of course, but also during the pandemic, is this, on the one hand side, the need for timely statistics and output for now on evolution of phenomena and indicators for now, but also these regional statistics. And we have set up these urban data centers, and there on the left is the list of the centers that are part of this network, where we have a collaboration between CBS and the counties or the cities that are participating in this. Both parties have a lot of data themselves, and by fusing the data from these cities with ours, we get a much better insight into local dynamics, so that we can really help these policymakers to address these local policy questions. And there's also always a great need for benchmarking and monitoring. How are we doing as a city make progress in terms of climate, energy transition, which are now extremely hot topics, of course. New data sources are high on the agenda, have always been, but since we have already quite a lot of data in-house, like survey and admin sources, we are really targeting new data sources which can be combined with the data we have already. And then the thinking has changed a little bit, and we first focus on secondary data, the admin sources and the new data sources that we can acquire that exist already, before we bother the Dutch population with a questionnaire, because the Dutch are famous for being quite low in the response rates. So we have an issue there in terms of representativity. So we try to focus very much on these new data sources, and censored data have offered a lot of potential also during the pandemic. And there's an example of what the Office for National Statistics has done. They have used these jam cams. These are publicly available streamed traffic cameras images to monitor the busyness during the lockdown. And they are having been using these, it's like they put in a pipeline to bring in real-time data into the office. They use convolutional neural networks to identify the types of vehicles. You can't identify individuals. You can identify if they're a person, but not who they are. And then they created these time series to have faster indicators on the impact of the measurements that were taken during the pandemic. What they didn't do, they made this very explicit in terms of privacy, is observing people if they respect the social distancing of 2 meters. This is hard to do technically, and also you wonder whether large town centers are the most representative area of people's behavior. But anyway, you can see that statistical offices have been extremely proactive in trying to use the censored data available. CBS has similarly got hold of censored data of a private company called High Street. They measure pedestrian frequencies of inner city retail locations. And they constantly measure the number of people crossing the projected line on a shopping street in 67 cities at 140 locations in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. The sensors are laser scanners attached to building facades, generating a quadruple light curtain for reliable pedestrian frequency counting. And the purpose is to support digital applications to promote urbanity, attractiveness, and quality of the stay of city centers. They considered a couple of users like property owners, investors, retailers, urban and transportation planners, and researchers. And as you can see, we have analyzed some of this open data for 3 beautiful cities in Germany. We can see pedestrian counts of 3 selected cities between January last year and And this year, where we measure the, according to the lines, you have the hard lockdown, and then you see what happens after that, and then the release of the lockdown and the behavior that follows, and then the soft lockdown. And I think we can conclude, if there are lessons to be drawn from Corona and the pandemic for climate, is that behavior is, of course, of crucial importance to understand the dynamics and the and coming up with sustainable solutions. So ultimately, this is very much a sociological problem if we want to address pandemic and accordingly climate crises. So the next step is really dialogue and cooperation. It's easily said, of course, and it's hard to do, specifically when we think of the collaboration with private businesses, because privately owned data is for us very high value. Telephone data, smart meter data, Airbnb data, because we want to measure phenomena which we are now less able to measure. For example, tourism. People used to go to hotels, now they go to Airbnb, so we really have no reliable sampling frame anymore. So we need to really discuss with private companies, how can we get access to the data for public good? And of course, there's lots of sensitivity issues, privacy issues, that companies are worried about, public is worried about. So we need really business models for data for public good, where that CBS needs to stay transparent, of course, and look at the best technology like privacy preserved data sharing techniques in order to make the added value of these data. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sophie, for your input. If you would be, there will be, I'm sure there will be some questions in the come up. I apologize for, we have a slight delay, but I would like to now give the floor to Vadim Kramer, our last panel discussions. Vadim, nice to see you. Good morning. The floor is yours. Could you also provide your input?
Thank you very much. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Very good. Thank you very much, Brock, and organizers of this conference for inviting me. For me, it is a great honor to be a part of our great community and be involved in the planning and preparing and contributing to the application we submitted, and also this great output of our work as this conference, and nice presentations and discussions. And I try to follow chat, also very interesting questions over there. Thank you very much. So let me, don't be confused that you would see a little bit different design. I prepared a small slide set, actually a combination of 4 different slide sets, not more than 300 slides, so it will not take more than 17 hours for you to listen. Let me start with this. I will share the screen. Oh, it is over here, and please tell me if you could see it properly.
We can see the first slide out of 300, you said.
Very good. So, first of all, a little bit about the green city. This is the picture of the city of Oulu. And the university campus is actually a few kilometers to the left, but you see the city is fairly green. It is a small one. We don't have any skyscrapers, and that's why we are very much concerned about the green future of our planet. And the city of Oulu contributes through several networks and initiatives, and we have referred all of those when we prepared the application that we submitted to the Green Deal call. I'm very happy, Thomas, to hear your presentation about the Fablabs and all the insights. We have used the approach that you developed when we planned our OMG labs. Now, when we joined the University of Oulu at the same campus, we do not have those labs anymore, but we still run a Fablab here at the Lindenmark campus, and that is really a great success. So our students and citizens could come and do something over there, and I think that is a very important process or arrangement that could really join several stakeholders or different setups of inhabitants and citizens together and allow some kind of freedom. I'm also very happy that you mentioned about the small and cheap drones that people could construct there. Some of the moments are relevant also to these moments that I would like to bring for a discussion today. But before that, I would like to point everyone's attention to the huge event that Europe has achieved today. Just because of our conference, they decided to wrap up some things, and today was announced in the morning that we have reached the agreement. So now we have this provisional agreement that will shape our contribution to the green future of the world for the next 30 years. So many of these moments that were brought by you, Thomas, Jeremy, you mentioned, and you, Sophie, particularly a combination of 4 groups of stakeholders like government, citizens, research, and business. So under this agreement, there would be some ways explored, the processes, how all these stakeholders could be involved and together contribute. And some goals are set up over there. They all came from this climate agreement and then associated with the European Green Deal. So that is for us to explore and see the progress in the following years. Well, now back to what unmanned aircraft systems can do. I didn't want to present you any tables or some graphs or results of research that you could see from those published white papers, research results, and something. I just want to show you a list of those ideas that we already do, or that we already plan to do, or that we would like to do here, right in all. If you will have a look at this list from the first glance, it looks like, oh, there is a lot. But basically, many of these application examples, they have a lot in common. And I wouldn't go to any details over here, but I just would like to say that when you speak of unmanned aircraft system, for many people, it's 2 ends of the domain. Either those toys that you could see on the shelves in supermarkets, or those probably air taxis that could carry a person or a group of people. But there is very much a lot between all this. And that between is actually the mainstream. I would not like to focus on those very typical applications of drones like delivery, what nowadays maybe medical delivery, especially in coronavirus situation, observation, monitoring, etc. Those are too generic, but down to very concrete implementations, like Jeremy, you lifted up a very important moment about the flood. We live at almost 0 level of the sea, so that's the Baltic Sea. But even here, we see how the level of water changes. And yes, drones or unmanned aircraft systems cannot prevent that, but they can help you to, for example, observe that, to see the change, because they are much cheaper than helicopters, for example, much, much cheaper. So when you speak of application of drones, many argumentation may come. Some say that, okay, this is the green something, but as we discussed also during the last conference a week ago, the previous session of the conference, that not all electric energy is green. It is not always produced in a green way. Not a problem, we are targeting there, and sooner or later there will be more and more green energy. It is not possible to say that all applications of drones always greener than traditional transportation, but there are some factors that you could not imagine. For example, secondary factors. For example, keeping up the roads in a good condition, that's very expensive. And that is not any green, as you all know. Producing high quality roads surface is very expensive and not any green. So in the future, when you saw in science fiction movies that more machines, transportation means are flying, So that is probably the future we are targeting. And that is probably a greener future than we have now. Let's see how it will happen. But then it was interesting to discuss. Sometimes people are wondering, well, okay, you do have those drones and basically what they can actually do for the green something. Here is a collection of things that you could measure and some examples of the sensor. I didn't want to advertise, so some of you may recognize who are the manufacturers of those, some of those sensors. But on the right, you see a combination of what can be measured or monitored, continuously monitored with drones. And here's an interesting moment. When I said that, okay, fixed sensors are much better. Yes, they are excellent and they are much cheaper. That's true. But sometimes there are moments that you cannot cover all the surface and all the kind of 3D area. And the more complicated it is, the more difficult it is to cover with those fixed sensors. Every fixed sensor has some kind of visual sector that it observes, the visual range where it works, and nothing beyond that range. So there you may have something that sometimes a person needs to walk, and it is not a problem if you need a walk. It is a bigger problem when you need to climb somewhere, in a very dangerous environment, like industrial environment, or for example, this power grid, where a certain height. And there are many cases where drones are much more effective than human. And the same situation as with robots. When I say that, okay, they may calm jobs from people, but you know, there are some jobs that we would not wish people to have, too dangerous. So their drones may help as well as robots. And it is not even all what is listed here. This list is just something that is directly relevant to the kind of observe, for example, how the development of climate, the quality of air, and all kind of pollutions. But there are many other things which are over here. Sophie presented, it was very excellent to see what was the development of statistics. And I would say that what we discuss here with our students studying data science, that the most boring, one of the most boring jobs of 20th century was a statistician job using statistical methods. And one of the most excited jobs of the 21st century, or how it was said by Forbes, the sexiest job of 21st century, is the data analyst, or even further, the data scientist that uses statistical methods. But how to gather those methods? So here drones can bring a lot. Just yesterday at the meeting, a team of 2 people reported that through a course of several, just not many, just several flights, several field experiments, they collected more than 1 terabyte of data. That's a lot. And if you think that many like intensive operations or use of drones, there is a lot of data. So we need to analyze that, and that's a huge input that expand the ability of those fixed sensors. Even more, the fixed sensors cannot observe at certain altitude, which is higher than buildings, for example, in the city, or they cannot measure the propagation of the cloud of something. While drones can do that, you could send a drone which will fly after the cloud and observe the development of the cloud of a pollution or something like that. But even more, again, this list doesn't include the physical activities that drones can do. Like, for example, in the forest, drones could shoot something like a darts, a small sensors in the form of a small rocket with a needle that could stuck in the tree and be there and take some measurements. Drones could plant sensors across the agricultural fields or in the parks, in the city parks or somewhere else. It is very expensive when you walk or drive and do it manually, but drones can do it fast and efficient. But well, drones, and then remember government, society, research, business. Here is the initiative that started 4 years ago as a part of European Innovation Partnership for Smart Cities and Communities. Vasilis Agoridas, who is the initiator of the initiative, he's still asked by us, by the community, to continue to lead this initiative. And the initiative has been transformed to what we call now UIC2. So that's Urban Air Mobility for Smart City and Community. On the 1st of December last year, the initiative presented a manifesto. I will come back later to that. But now this is the effort of 46 at the moment cities that agreed to join together and to explore together the opportunities, how, in this case, urban air mobility, where drones are just another modality to urban mobility, in addition to all those that we have usually, micro transportation like bicycles, and then some bigger transportation, including train, water, whatever, underground if any city has. But there is a third dimension, and that third dimension is the air. And within the urban air mobility, that's the dimension that where we consider operations of drones, the smaller, the bigger ones, the hobbyists, etc., including air taxi and whatever emergency and authority enforcement services. But here it was started as 12 demonstrators. Some of those were across the border, and community has grown to 46 cities. And these 46 cities discussed all together about how to integrate, how to develop the sustainable urban mobility solutions. And then very important, how to demonstrate that to citizens. Because one of the recent researches that was published just in Germany, people don't want to have any urban mobility. They don't want to have any pollution in the air, either visual or audio, like noise from drones, no. But some benefits are over there when they see that there is a drone flying and bringing some first aid mean to save someone's life. That's a different than perception. But
sorry,
then,
Vadim, sorry to interrupt. May I kindly ask you to wrap up the coming minute because
yes.
I was a bit
yes,
slow in the very beginning. There. That would be very kind. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So these are the different task forces that are under the community. And why I wanted to present it here, that first you would like to see what is the effort, what this initiative does. And I would like to encourage to have a look and see whether there is any interest for you and to join the initiative. What I did as well, I bring information about our application and about our community to all these cities, to raise awareness among them about what we are doing, what is our approach, and what is our target. So this is the link to the manifesto. You will see this slide set, so you could go and check and share with your colleagues from those cities where you are, and they could consider contact me or Vasilis or something on joining the community. But I would like to wrap up with this. I am really very happy what I said, that we have so many approaches to the same problem, because problem is very complicated. And I really look forward to working with you all on this hopefully funded project that we submitted, and on the other projects that we would like to plan, and also on whatever we could have actions to make a better, a greener future of our planets, like our initiative and this UIC2. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vadim, for your enlightening us with the great initiatives. And I hope one day when the corona is over, I could just come and visit you in Ulu and then see the drones in action. I apologize for making the program now a bit dragging because of a mistake on my part. I'd like to now give the floor to Professor Dr. Orhan Perez, Dean at Bar Ilan University, who will give us a talk on constitutional aspects of climate legislation. Orhan, welcome. The floor is yours. If Vadim stops sharing, I think we can start.
I need to upload my presentation. So just a moment. Great. So good morning, everyone. Do you see the presentation?
Yes.
Great. So my talk would be on the constitutional aspects of climate legislation, and I want to highlight some basic problems in climate laws that are worthy of exploration, and also to share some practical examples of solutions. So let me start with explaining the problem that we are facing with climate law legislation is really about how we think about the future and about our preferences for the future. And I would like to start with an example taken from a paper by Reed and Van Leeuwen that conduct the following experiment. They asked their subjects to choose what they would like to eat next week, and they gave them a choice between oranges and premium chocolate. And when they present the problem as such, most of the subjects choose to eat oranges when the choice was what to eat next week. And then they did the same experiment, but now they asked them to choose what they would like to eat today. And then the answer was quite different. Here, the subject all chosen to eat chocolate. And what is the problem that this experiment describes? It's what we call present biased preferences. And what do we mean by present biased preferences? It's the human tendency to overemphasize immediate benefits relative to delayed benefits. And it is this human tendency that makes it difficult for us to eat healthy or to exercise, because we tend to value more the immediate benefits of eating ice cream or watching Netflix on the sofa than doing the necessary sacrifice that is required by unhealthy diet and doing no exercise. And while we tell ourselves that next week we will start our diet and start exercising when next week arrives, again, we prefer the immediate benefits over the delayed ones. And the same problem goes also where we think at the national level or at the city level when we speak about climate legislation. Because when we speak about climate legislation, the problem, climate legislation requires us to make sacrifices now in order to receive some benefits in the future. Because after all, what is the meaning of climate legislation? It requires to raise energy prices, so it will be more costly for us to travel abroad. It requires us to do various things that might make our life now more costly. And the problem is that when our governments and our parliaments promise us that in the future they will do all that is necessary under the climate commitments, the next governments and the next parliaments might yield to the temptation and like our the examples from the personal life might not live up to the commitments. So what do we do in our personal life in order to overcome this present bias problem? So we use various techniques. For example, we use coach. We pay someone to tell us that we need to exercise and that we need to go on diet. Of course, this person, he earns money for nothing because we can do it by ourselves. We can tell ourselves that we need diet or to exercise. But once we pay someone to tell us and we meet every week, this might help us to commit in fulfilling our commitment. We use social monitoring. We go out to run with someone. So if we don't come, we disappoint him. And sometimes we use institutions. We pay annual fee for a country club, and then we feel sorry if we don't go to exercise because we have some sunk commitment. We already paid some few hundred dollars or shekels or pounds, and it's important us not to just waste this money. But how can we translate these commitment devices to the national level, to the legislative level? How can we commit future governments and parliaments to fulfill their climate commitments? So when we look at it from a legal jurisprudential perspective, the main technique for committing future governments and parliaments to legal obligations is through constitutional law. Constitutional law is the way in which we commit future generations to certain norms that are legislated now. And the way constitutions lock in future generations is by making it harder to repeal certain legal arrangements. The problem is that when we look at the climate context, such constitutional techniques are rarely used. And so we are left with a problem. So we need to lock in future generations for climate commitments, but we don't have access to the constitutional machinery that is usually used for such lock-in arrangements. So what do we have? And I think we can see various devices. One very interesting device that is used by various climate act legislation is independent climate committees. And what these independent climate committees, which are usually comprised from experts and have a large degree of autonomy, they produce climate budgets for the next 5 or 10 years. They review government action, whether it has indeed follow up the budget that was prepared by the climate committee. They force these climate acts also force the government to report to parliament and respond to critique that is generated by these climate change committees. And by creating these climate change committees, we also create multiple centers of power that can deter government from not keeping its promises. Because remember, if we do not enshrine the idea of climate change committee at the constitutional level, they can also be repealed by the future parliament or government. But once we establish them as centers of power that have political credibility, it becomes much harder for future parliaments or governments to just repeal them as if they haven't existed at all, because they become political players with their own credibility. And if we look at the landscape of climate legislation, I think there are two interesting examples. One is the UK Climate Change Committee, which is an independent statutory body established under the Climate Change Act, which I think has done a very nice job in producing a proposal and I think forcing a very scientific-oriented discourse on the British Parliament. And another a new example is the New Zealand Climate Change Commission, which you can see that its website states that our independence means that we can provide impartial advice, challenge, and hold the government to account on climate action. I didn't have a chance to look closely into the climate legislation proposed by the European Commission. Indeed, the federal structure of the EU provides some way to commit, of course, the different national states to the climate commitments undertaken at the European level. But I think this is one of the important questions that we now face at the international arena. And of course, the international process that began with the Paris Agreement and which will conclude with the Glasgow meeting in November is also an important step in this commitment question. Of course, we know that the negotiations at the international level do not have not so far provided the sufficient binding commitments on the member states to actually commit to significant reductions of climate, of CO2 emissions, etc. So, because I don't have a lot of time, I will stop here, and I'll be happy to hear any comments or to engage in a discussion.
Thank you very much, Orhan, for this very nice talk. As a matter of fact, in Maastricht, we also have a very strong behavioral studies group, I would say, and also other related disciplines. So it was very nice to hear some familiar terms that you presented. I'd like to give the floor to our next speaker, and if you would be so kind, Orhan, in the meantime, if there are questions on the chat bar, if you could respond to them in the coming minutes, that would be lovely. And I'd like to now give the floor to Diogo Pinto from Fast Track Action, who is going to talk about financial instruments fostering climate neutrality.
Hello, hi, can you hear me? Can you hear me and see me?
We can hear you, we can see the slides, but we don't see you now.
Okay.
Your camera is off.
My camera is not on. So for this, I'll try to... Okay, I think this is working now. Perfect. Okay, just perfect. Okay, thank you, Burak. Thank you for the introduction. And it's indeed a pleasure to be here and sharing the stage with this great team. And I really hope this is just the beginning of our collaboration. And we'll see what comes next. So my name is Diogo Pinto. I'm EU Programs Manager at Fast Track Action. And today I'll tell you a bit about some examples of financial instruments to promote and to support the transition of linear cities to circular cities. So in 2018, the European Investment Bank has issued a report suggesting circular steps for cities to take for the transition of the cities to circular cities. And they start by raising the question, what problems are cities facing today? So they highlighted some examples of wastage and linear externalities in these linear cities, including the population density in urban cities, also the consumption of resources and energy in the cities, the waste management and production and management, the underutilization of some assets, products and space, inefficient transportation, also the air pollution, including the greenhouse gas emission generation and emission. So in this same report, they identify these issues, and they proposed what could be a circular city of tomorrow by raising also some interesting points in terms of mobility, use of resources and waste valorization, the production of energy through renewable and local production, also the reverse logistics, the transition to digital and the utilization of digital tools, also buildings and more modular buildings and shared buildings. So definitely a report worth reading that I think it's we all should give it a try if you want. So of course this transition to a circular city is sustained by the Sustainable Development Goals, right, of the United Nations. We can highlight some that are directly linked to circularity, but in fact there are some others that are not directly. They probably are indirectly linked to this topic, but just to show that there's this circularity is a transversal point here to several sustainable development goals. and that impacts really impact what we are doing and where we are going. So the objective of this report is indeed to highlight the circular steps for the cities to adopt. You can take a look, as I was telling you, on these steps. These are the 15 steps that are highlighted in the documents. They are divided by plan, act, monitor, mobilize, and monitor. But today, my talk will focus on the eighth topic: the catalyze circular developments through regulation, incentives, and financing. So the question here that I would like to bring is what kind of financial instruments exist supporting the transition of linear cities to circular cities. So I'll start by, so this is divided in three different topics. So grants, funds, and private investors. In terms of grants, that's what brought us here in the first site, and I think this we'll see how it goes. Fingers crossed. But the Green Deal, the first round of the Green Deal calls brought us here, and they were open last year, and was actually the last one of the last calls. Some of the last calls of the Horizon 2020. Now in the Horizon Europe, the question, the matter of circularity and circular economy is definitely more present, and again, very transversal to the different pillars and programs on the Horizon Europe. Some calls were already launched, particularly on Pillar 1 and Pillar 3. Some others will come up soon. The circular economy and circularity are present in Pillar 2, mainly in different clusters of this Pillar 2, including the digital industry and space, climate, energy, and mobility, and food, bioeconomy, natural resources, agriculture, and environment. Also on Pillar 3, on promoting an innovative Europe, and definitely circular economy has to be promoted in this innovative Europe through the European Innovation Council, the European Innovation Ecosystems, and also the European Institute of Innovation and Technology and its different KICs, or the different clusters that they are working on. So another type of grants that will exist in the new 2021-2027 program is the new European Innovation Council and SMEs Executive Agency, the former EASM, that brings the new single market program that in this case includes the COSM program. I think some of us are familiar with this program, and now will be included in the single market program. As you can see by the pillars, several of them are related to circularity and circular economy, and definitely we'll have there will be some opportunities here to finance initiatives and activities on circularity and circular economy. And another program that exists in this EASMIA, under this EASMIA program, is the LIFE program. I believe most of us are also aware of this program. It has now a new version, and it's ready to be launched for the 2021-2027 program or calls. And in fact, a circular economy is one of the main pillars of this program, but it's present in several others, including nature and biodiversity, clean energy. So circularity always present here, and we'll definitely have some opportunities under this program. Another option is the Interreg Europe. That for now it doesn't have yet a work program for 2021-2027. There's indeed an open public consultation for the stakeholders that want to contribute to this program. So if you are familiar with the program, or if you want to contribute to this program, just feel free to fill in the survey that exists in the website. I think we all have something to say to this. Could have something to say to this program. And finally, in the grant section, I would like to highlight the European Urban Initiative, or the former Urban Innovative Actions. Some of you might be aware of this type of actions. It is now transformed, and will have now it's being rebranded to be the European Urban Initiative. And this new program will focus on scaling up some of the projects and the knowledge that were developed in the previous projects funded by this program. So with a stronger focus on circularity and sustainability and scale up. So proving here the financial and technical feasibility of these projects, and some other information that you can find in the links that are available in the presentation. So in terms of funds, one of the funds that are particularly interesting in this scope of the circular economy is the European Circular Bioeconomy Funds, which is a venture fund exclusively dedicated to bioeconomy and the circular economy in Europe. It has a target size of 250 million euros, to which the European Investment Bank has committed 100 million euros. And it's these funds invest in 6 strategic different fields: the blue economy and fishery, packaging, agro-farming, forestry, nutrition, basic materials and chemicals, home and personal care, through equity, on technologies at TRL 6 to 9, and with investment size ranging from 2.5 to 10 million. So another fund that can definitely support the transition of cities towards more circular cities is European Investment Funds, that supports SMEs by improving their access to finance through different financing mechanisms. Here you have some divided by equity and debt / loans. And you can take a look on some of these funds. If you want, in the end, I can also share some information we have prepared for these funds, and some of these financial instruments. Another option is the European Structural and Investment Funds that come from the previous Horizon 2020 the previous work program. Now in 2021, 2027, they will also be part of this. Will also support this type of initiatives. These funds have 5 different focus areas: research and innovation, digital technologies, supporting the low carbon economy, sustainable management of natural resources and small businesses. And they are divided in 5 different funds that you can find here, and you can find more information about these funds and how they work in terms of grants and equity opportunities in the link in this presentation. So finally, in the funds, there's also the Innofin program that supports innovators in Europe. And that there was a fund established by the European Investment Bank and the European Commission under the Horizon 2020 program for research and innovation. And it provides a range of financial instruments and advisory services to help innovative firms in the European Union and beyond gain access to finance. So you might also be familiar with this fund, and it's particularly relevant in this context. And finally, the last one that I would like to bring here is the European Social Fund Plus, previously a European Social Funds. Now, this fund is dedicated to promote sustainable employment, and it's particularly relevant in this context as well. And this new fund will incorporate the previous EU program for employment and social innovation that also aims to promote sustainable development and sustainable employment in the European Commission, in the European Union. So finally, I would like to bring to take some time with the private investors here, divided by their expertise and their nature. So we have mapped some private investors that invest in circular solutions and circular economy, from venture capitalists to corporate VCs, business angels and business angel associations. They are caring from our past knowledge, and we have some close contact with different VCs in Europe and also outside Europe, particularly North America. We know that their relation to the circular economy and to the buzz around the circular economy is also attracting private investors to the sector, and they are pretty much aware of what the market needs, and private investors can also be an option in terms of looking for financial instruments to support circular transition. Finally, I would just like to bring.
Can you quickly wrap it up, Diogo, if it is really the final slide?
Yeah, it is the final slide. Yes, indeed. It's just I would just like to bring the Circular Cities Funding Guide. You are probably aware of this tool that exists, and it was created by the European Investment Advisory Hub, and that aims to help cities become circular and improve access to finance for circular economy projects by bringing information about funding and guidelines to set up funding programs to the transition to a circular economy. So if you want to take a look on this, to know more about this site, the presentation will be shared in the end, and you can take a look here as well. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Diogo. Now, thanks for showing us a nice overview of the investment possibilities and climate actions. And next, we would like to go a little bit dive into deeper and give the floor to Andrea Bogi from European Crowdfunding Network, who will actually talk about one of these domains of investment opportunities via crowdfunding, since the climate change is supposed to be a bit more bottom-up, also proposed by the European Commission. Andrea, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I think you can hear me and see me, I suppose, as well as my presentation. Yes. Oh, sorry. Let's try to put it full screen. So you see it. All right. So first of all, thank you, likewise, like everybody else, to organize this event, this conference, that give us an opportunity to present what we can do all together, what we can do also singularly to support the cities to transition to climate neutrality. And also, I would like to thank Diogo for his presentation, because make my work a bit easier, since he already provided the context in terms of financial situation and the financial aspect that are needed to actually put forward and implement this transition. During the presentation, basically, I will just have a quick overlook on the basic concept of crowdfunding and in how it relates to the energy transition. And then I will try to explain more in particular what type of action crowdfunding can actually support, and with some example of what we do and how this can be actually applied. So going straight to the point, let's start by assessing that crowdfunding is not a new concept. The idea, even for public-oriented projects, this is something that's been around for quite some time. Here, this is an example of the Statue of Liberty was actually co-financed by a call for action to the public in order to put up the money that the municipality of New York would not put in order to rise the statue that was donated by France. And if you also want another example, actually, the Tour Eiffel as well was partially financed with public donations. So this is something that's actually been around quite some time. It's nothing new. What's new nowadays is the digital dimension. We talked before this morning about how the digitalization is actually changing the paradigm of society, the paradigm of the energy transition, and this is not different. The digital dimension, I just brought crowdfunding to a new level. The fact that everybody is now connected, everybody is being, especially new generation, more and more digitally aware and digitally skilled, makes so that a tool like crowdfunding, through this digital connection, can have a wider reach and wider impact on his actions. Therefore, the basic difference nowadays is just the fact that crowdfunding has become, as a definition, just a way to collect small amount of money from a lot of people through the internet. So just to pulling together resources, outsourcing the raising of capital to a crowd, which can be both in the sense of exclusivity or just in compensation of, or in combination with other funding to just reach common goals. So when this translates in concrete, what normally people think about crowdfunding is, of course, relates to entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship, people that put out their ideas and ask for money in order to gain access to finance that they might not have, or they want to add to the finance they already have. But this is also just a limited aspect of crowdfunding that doesn't take account what is actually all about, which is mostly about communities. Because what crowdfunding does, in addition to the traditional finance, it can be a bank or the financial market, is to bring in the crowds, in a cohesive approach, providing consultation and creating a feel of ownership that is much needed for the ideas. And this we also saw during the first episode of this conference, when we touched it upon even this morning. Participation and ownership are essential if you want to put the resources for the energy transition in actual reality, in practice. And then, of course, one aspect that is not often considered is the fact that crowdfunding is actually also bringing together institutions as well. Because crowdfunding, particularly when you talk about social priorities, like, for example, the Green Deal, social transition, and climate neutrality for cities, it's just a way for cities to engage further with the citizenship through the concept of civic crowdfunding. Basically just this: mobilize the citizenship, engage with them through an open call to help finance the social priorities of the institutions. So in concrete, what does it mean in terms of supporting the energy transition? What can crowdfunding actually do for this? There are, of course, the two aspects we already touched upon. The first one is the basic one, of course, is to address the financial gap. We all know that the Commission put up the Green Deal plan for 1 trillion euros to be invested in the next 10 years to 2030. But we also know that actually the plan already in its inception provided for a gap of at least 100 to 150 billion euros per year in the realization of these goals. And it was before taking account the new renewed goals for 2050. Therefore, crowdfunding can help fill this gap, can help raise the funds from non-traditional investors that normally are not considered when we are talking about the investments required. And this, in addition, has a bonus point of helping trickle effect on traditional investment, because as we all know, money follows money. And if we manage through crowdfunding to actually involve more the citizenship and raise additional capital, then maybe projects normally would not be considered for funding can also get those funding in order to compensate. And then, of course, there's the social dimension. Crowdfunding, as I said, it's a social endeavor, most and foremost. And what it does basically is to contribute to raise awareness on the priorities, but most of all to bridge the gap between technical and strategic level of the energy transition. What we are doing now, basically, it's the policy discussion, the technical discussion about the technology that needs to be implemented and how to be implemented, and then bridge the gap from this to the actual implementation and transfer into local level. Because then we can have all this talk, we can have all these plans, but then is the cities, is the local communities that need to actually implement this. And crowdfunding, it's a way to engage them and to actually put everything into context and practice. So the type of action we are talking about in this sense, of course, are mostly related to small scale projects. They are normally outside the traditional financial scheme that we discussed even before. Therefore, crowdfunding can help in order to put forward this kind of intervention, from small scale renewable and energy efficiency intervention to promote the overall decentralized energy system, support urban requalification, especially of regeneration of neighborhood that have been left out, that can be used in order to promote a more circular and sustainable economy. Increase energy access for off-grid communities as well, because of course, when we talk about cities, we talk mostly about the big centers. Big cities, they're the biggest polluters, but also we have the communities surrounding those cities. And some of them may not be inside the frame, inside the schemes for the expansion of the energy grid or as installation of energy efficiency installation. And crowdfunding can be a valuable tool for them to be part of this. Then, of course, on the financial side, crowdfunding democratizes energy investments. As I said, it provides a platform for people that normally do not invest or are not able to invest to be part of the energy transition in any capacity, also putting their stake in it, because maybe they're willing to, but they don't have the capital to access the traditional financial market. And then last but not least, all of these can also integrate and multiply public investment, because the main part of crowdfunding that it's not just the crowd. As discussed before, it's also community institutions. Therefore, when we think about crowdfunding for energy transition, this is not really the picture we have to think about, but this is the picture we should keep in mind, which is a combination of the different actors that can finance this transition. We saw before with Diogo all the different financing instruments at public and European level. Then we also have the private banks, and we have the municipality, in particular the regions that they have their own priorities, they have to finance the project, and the crowd can help match those financing. They can contribute all together to bring about the necessary investment for specific projects that needs to have a concrete impact. Therefore, we need to keep in mind that even when we talk about the structural fund or other European investments, crowdfunding can be part of it, can be at the center of it, because it can multiply. It can be in a direct way by co-financing some actions, or can be in a support way, like in most European projects, to finance part of the project, finance pilot actions, pilot coordination actions, or just to sustainability plans to support the project actions after the public finance has ended. So keeping all of this in mind, what we at the European Crowdfunding Network want to do is to try to leverage this potential and bring it to the cities, to the developers, to the citizens, in order for them to actually be able to use it. And in this order, we are trying to develop our skills in the field of sustainable energy and sustainable energy transition. We are developing our services, we are developing our skills and capacities. If we do it focusing on three main pillars. One is, of course, to develop the knowledge. As I said, crowdfunding is not new, but it's also true that in terms of particularly green transition, there are not enough data as of now. We don't have a collected database on the best practices and how they can apply the different cases. So what we do is to try to examine what crowdfunding does in different realities and how it can help and replicate it. Then, of course, we stimulate engagement. And this is, of course, is an example, but we provide also tailored training and mentorship to help people and institutions engage in crowdfunding, help them understand how they can use it and where they can use it the best and which ways they can be done. And then last but not least, of course, we promote action. Promoting action, of course, can be within projects or can be also in the concept of providing technical assistance for practical solutions, developing financial schemes that can be adopted together with crowdfunding and public funds, as we discussed before. And to give some specific examples, of course, the first one and foremost is crowdfunding for ASIF project that we are currently been developing in the last 2 or 3 years, which means combining crowdfunding with, in particular, structural fund and cohesion policy. And we have conducted already 2 studies. One is triggering participation, which was a study we conducted with the European Investment Bank and DG Employment to collect the best practices on how match funding experiences have been applied in different communities, in different municipalities, in particular across Europe, with different types of engagement. And then, of course, last year was this other study on crowdfunding for ESF opportunities, where together with the EIB again and FI Compass, it's a guide for public authorities and what kind of role they can play in matching crowdfunding solutions with structural funds in particular. What kind of role they have to be an active role, whether they can be just a matching opportunities for a crowdfunding project, or whether they can launch their own crowdfunding campaign and their own crowdfunding platform as well. So these are the 2 main studies we have conducted so far. We have a technical assistance capacity to help assist people that then want to go and try to implement all these solutions. And we are also now in the process of launching a new report by the end of May that's gonna go a little bit more in details on the technicalities and the legal aspect of how public authorities can actually work with crowdfunding. And then, sorry, last but not least, the European project. That's, as we discussed, what brought us together before. And there are different ways in which we have applied crowdfunding in this context, of course. The first that's most relevant also in this way for cities is our participation, for example, in urban innovative actions with the project DARE, which is a project about urban regeneration of a district in a city in northern Italy, Ravenna, where crowdfunding is used as a support action to promote a series of services they are going to be developed throughout the project for the urban regeneration. A crowdfunding is going to be a support action to just co-finance them and help them be supported after the public financing has ended. Then we also participate in several Horizon 2020 projects that are currently running to promote, in particular, energy communities and energy poverty. COMETS is one of those. It's a research actions that try to investigate the basic principle and how they can be used of energy collective action initiative and energy communities. And of course, crowdfunding is one of these aspects that it's as a collective action and also as an enabling factor for general communities, how it can be used and what are its capacities. In a more concrete way, PowerPoor acts on the same level, but it's targeted more for tackling energy poverty and encourage people, energy poor people, on how to use alternative finance schemes and energy communities to develop implementation or take action to reduce energy poverty. And this is taking place with pilot actions in at least 8 countries across Europe, mostly Southern and Eastern Europe, of course. And then on the side of energy efficiency and renewables are more technical. There are 2 projects that are now developing schemes to support energy renovations. One is Greenfoot. It's aimed at football stadiums that you might know are probably one of the biggest polluters among buildings in European cities. And we are collaborating this project also. UEFA is a sponsor. And we are going to develop the crowdfunding-based instrument to co-finance energy renovation in sports building in France, Ireland, and Azerbaijan. And we will have also some big clubs that will be involved also in Sweden. And CTC,
Andrea, would you be so kind enough to quickly wrap up? We are a bit out of time. Thank you.
I wrap up immediately. Just to mention CTC, same concept, but it's exactly for public authorities and how to scale up the investment energy efficiency building. And in this sense, in particular, I suggest you, if you're interested in this topic, to check out first webinar of a webinar series on CTC investment plan next week on the 27th of April, which will present how public authorities can engage in energy efficiency, combining crowdfunding and communities and collective communities. You can, of course, check all this information on the presentation on our website. And just for anything, feel free to reach me or ask questions. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrea, for this nice presentation. If you could stop sharing your screen, and then if you would be so kind to answer the upcoming questions in the chat bar, that would be great. Thanks once again. Next, our presenter is Nuno Ferranda, CEO of F6S, an accelerator platform, and he's going to talk about FSTP instruments and whether they can be the catalyst for innovation undertaken by SMEs. Nuno, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Borak. Good morning, and good morning to everyone. It is a pleasure to be here in this conference today to share our outcomes in the European projects regarding financial support to third parties. So over the last years, F6S has been working on European projects on this topic, mainly because before that and in our daily life on the commercial activities, we are already working with accelerators, corporate, venture capital, and other governments besides European Union. So European Commission has launched this kind of funds at the end of FP7 with a new initiative that was the FIWARE initiative. And the objective of the financial support to third parties is really to distribute public funding to different people that normally get the funding. So it's typical that research entities, big corporates, and the people that are aware about the the public funding and the Horizon Europe or Horizon H 2020, they can apply and then can work together to get this kind of funds and work in research and development. But there are other stakeholders which are highly important and are not able to go there, or they don't have the resources, the knowledge, or even the capacity to work with other entities in such activities. Therefore, the European Commission launched these funds where they can support more startups, scale-ups, SMEs, as well as mid-caps, and for the uptake of digital innovation. Well, in fact, what it aims to, it simplifies the administrative procedures. So on one side, there is the Commission asking for so many procedures and so many things to us as partners in the consortia. But then on the other side is the project that will apply and will then make this available, these funds available in a more simple way to the market. And this is very, very important. Then this will be creating a light and friendly application scheme for SMEs and startups and entrepreneurs. And then you can engage more market-driven SMEs as well. And we are fostering open innovation, open R&D and market orientation, also in the research projects, because now the research projects, they need to do research, but also then they need to think about, okay, this has to be applied in the market and this has to be tested by different entities that we need to engage in the project. So the project becomes more interactive and more friendly and more easy to later on uptake in the market. We have also come across different applications of this mechanism. So there are entities or projects that use this to integrate new concepts or new products from SMEs, or to solve specific challenges that they have in their main framework and they want to solve a module that is not working properly. You can also use it for community building or doing pilots, demonstrators, somehow to engage early adopters, which is quite important, especially if you have a technology and you focus on a specific domain. And now you have the opportunity of getting this technology and ask for people to test this in different domains, in different sectors. So it increases your outreach. So I would like to express to you the results of a couple of studies we have done with different projects that we have worked with SMEs. So these are what the SMEs tell us that is their impact. So they use this mechanism to develop new products, to grow their team, as well as to access additional private funding. So a startup, when they get like 60 to 150K from these kind of projects, they have now a nice bulk of money to go and ask for a co-investment of a private investor, or even use crowdfunding like Andrea was expressing today. This is also a very nice mechanism to access new customers. On the other side, this is some statistics of the results, of the tangible results we got from the SMEs. So they really need this to improve their processes and products, acquiring know-how, increase competitive collaboration. So all these topics that normally we think this could be handy, when the project has the idea of bring this mechanism, mainly because they are forced to do, there are very important benefits and results on the side of the SMEs. And this is something that we all should take into consideration when preparing this kind of mechanism. On the other side, what are the value-added services that the SMEs value more? So, of course, equity-free money. All of us like money, and all of us enjoy to have this without having to pay back. Of course, we have to work, we have to deliver, but this is also a great opportunity to deliver or to develop a specific product and to take it further, to take a step further, not necessarily up to the market, but at least if they have some money to invest and to confirm if the idea is nice and should go through. The other relevant activity is the know-how from the project team, and this is by priority, okay? So if us, like 2OC, it's a great project and great team, if we manage to get this in fact, one of the most valuable things that the SMEs and startups and also the pilot cities will get is really to have access to this team, to have access to the platform that we will be offering, as well as to all the functionalities and the network that we have there. So mentorship, and last but not least, which is highly important and they give also very important relevance, is the promotion activity. So these are moments that the SMEs have to connect with people in their target sectors or target markets that normally they would not connect with. So this is very, very important for them. But of course, nothing comes easily, and there are some barriers that they have to go through, which are not so easy for SMEs. So one of the first barriers is the lack of experience in international projects and how to do collaboration projects and how to work together with other entities. Remember that we are talking about companies that may have like 5, 10, 20, 30 people. Of course, they can go up to 200, but most of the companies have less people. Then, so they don't have the network to build consortium. And that's why it's very important in the projects to bring this kind of networks and create matchmaking momentums. They have also rudimentary stage of skills, and they don't handle the administrative process. So they have some barriers regarding this, which of course, that's the side of the project to make this simple, not to ask for timesheets, not to ask for receipts of their activities, but really to pay against deliverables, to pay against achieved milestones. So on the other side, their expectations are quite high as well regarding what we are offering. So the services that we offer is quite relevant for them. The access to testing and pilots and facilities, the mentoring again, the matchmaking and networking. Well, this is a little bit the repeating information regarding the impacts, but this is what they expect before they run into these activities. Remember that these are results from a couple of projects, so this is highly important. And what does F6S brings to this? Well, we are already doing this on our normal life, I would say, outside European projects. So we work with more than 4,000 corporates to make their activities running in our platform, as well as 17,000 entities across the world to make their open calls there. And so we'll bring this network. We have more than 1.9 million tech startups in the platform that will easily, or of course, depending, we have 30% only in Europe. We would help them to engage with the project, the ones that make, I would say, that are targeting to the project activities. We also work on 3 pillars within European projects, connecting with our commercial offers. So intelligent data. So we work with corporates today to bring intelligence about the market trends, as well as the SMEs and technology trends on European level. And we bring this information to the projects. We also do the open call management, and we support the communication and campaigns to acquire and scout for companies that fit to the product. Well, I don't want to go and sell F6S more. There is a lot of value that we could bring to European projects, but besides that is the value that we bring outside. So here you see 62 million distributed in the last 4 years over European projects, but in fact we distribute more than $3 billion per year through the different programs that are on F6S. So I think it's much more relevant. Everyone, if you want to go and engage with F6S, it's more than welcome to do it. And yeah, I don't want to take more of your time. I wanted to share this vision and somehow aggregate the information that Diogo and Andrea have shared with different sources of finance and bring these opportunities and also the view of the SMEs so that you understand the value that the projects have and also the FSTP mechanism is bringing to the European framework. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, for this very, very lovely talk and also following up on the previous presentations too. I would like to ask you also to answer questions that might come up in the chat bar. And now next, I'd like to give the floor to our next speaker, Saveria Boulanger from Italy, from University of Bologna. Saveria, will give a talk.
Thank you.
And the floor is yours, Saveria.
Thank you very much. So I will try to share my presentation. Might be this one.
I think we are a technical problem. I don't see Saverina. I think she has dropped out. And I was wondering whether she will be back. Okay, let's just give it a try. Saverina, she's just back here.
Yes, I'm sorry. I think that my computer just keep me outside
Okay.
Okay, so maybe, okay, can you see it now?
Yes, now we can see. The floor is yours.
Okay.
If you could just present in 10 minutes, that would be
Yes.
great. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much. So good morning, and thank you for having us in this very interesting conference. So I am Saveria Boulanger, and I am here in representation of a research group based at the Department of Architecture of the University of Bologna in Italy. So I will present today a contribution based on our most recent ongoing research activities dealing with the phenomenon of energy poverty in Europe. So in particular, we propose a reflection on how to tackle energy poverty by fostering bottom-up experiences of sharing economy and in particular energy communities. Long history into the field of building energy efficiency, building renovation and retrofitting. I am in particular also an architect working not only at the building scale, but mainly questioning the topic of climate change and energy efficiency also at the district level. I, in fact, believe that energy transition and climate change and energy efficiency need to be done considering the mutual relations between the several layers composing our cities, and not only the layers that compose the city, but also involving people. This aspect of people participation and people involvement is, of course, confirmed by all the latest research on climate change, on smart city, on positive energy district, and so on. All these approaches, in fact, foresees people participation as a crucial aspect in order to achieve either number of impact. But working with real community since several years, it appeared to us immediately how people are often simply not in the situation of taking action and understanding what is their true role in climate change, as they need to fight with everyday problem, especially with poverty and in particular with energy poverty. According with the Energy Poverty Observatory in Europe, more than 50 million households are in energy poverty conditions. And in particular, we have 57 million people unable to heat their homes during winter, 104 million people unable to access a minimum level of comfort during summers, and 52 million people that pay energy bills late. So these data are the proof that the phenomenon of energy poverty is really spread across Europe and that its dimension is really relevant. We have some differences on how this phenomenon hit the different climatic regions, we can say, in Europe. But in general, we have these experiences not only in the south of Europe, but also in the north. So these data are important to take into consideration when we are designing innovative intervention in cities that requires people participation, because if we need to involve people in innovative processes, we can just say that sometimes they just cannot be in the situation of supporting innovation because they have this typology of priorities that are linked with poverty. However, this can also be a trigger for them, because it is possible to let them understand maybe better their potential, the potential benefit that our actions can have on them and can give to them. But let's have a very brief, deeper look at what energy poverty exactly is. So according with several studies and with the origin of the concept, energy poverty identifies a situation where a family or individual does not achieve an adequate level of essential energy services due to a cascade of conditions, usually low income and high energy expenditure caused by poor energy efficiency of housing. In particular, one of the first definitions from Brenda Boardman links energy poverty with family income, including into the concept those households whose fuel expenditure on all energy services exceed the 10% of their income. And this aspect is important as it highlights how energy poverty is not an absolute dimension, but it needs to be put in relation with a specific condition of the country, of the area, of the climatic region in which we are, and on the welfare and income condition in which the building or the block or the intervention is placed. Indeed, according to the International Energy Agency, energy poverty includes not only the lack of access to modern energy services, but also the reliability of these services. In general, the services that are usually inadequate can be very different. The most known one are heating and cooling, but this can also be related to lighting, household appliances, transport, and others. This is a slide showing in a graphical dimension the European situation in 2018 for what regards the share of population not able to keep their home adequately warm. Of course, this is just one of the key performance indicators with which energy poverty is currently measured, but it gives us a general understanding of the phenomenon. So how can we deal with this phenomenon? The European Commission tried to help us, especially in the last years, including energy poverty in the last clean energy package, but also in the 2050 long-term strategy, as they directly cite energy poverty in several of their documents. I don't have now time to go deep into this definition, but they will be present in the presentation for you later. It is important to note that the European Commission has set up the Energy Poverty Observatory in order to have data about this phenomenon, and they ask each country to introduce in their national energy and climate plans specific action and activities for fighting against energy poverty. We recently published on the Energies Scientific Journal a review of the most recent studies on the topic, and what emerged is that an intense part of the research nowadays is mainly focusing on the theory of the concept, some other on methodology of measurement of energy poverty, and other on policies. And this is very important for us, as it seems that the general understanding of the phenomenon is somehow triggering a top-down type of response where welfare and policies seems to be the most important part. However, the part that seems less represented are those more linked with bottom-up initiatives or with behavioral studies or with just transition. But in our opinion, this can be very interesting approaches in order to give a response to the topic. In particular, we are working on two main elements that, in our opinion, are very interesting for addressing this challenge. So the first one is profilation, in the meaning, understanding the specific needs and necessities on the energy perspective that different people can have, but also leading to the concept of energy citizenship. And the second one is energy communities. To tackle energy poverty, in fact, implies a change of paradigm in the everyday lifestyle and the different configuration of the urban socio-technical system linked to energy as a social necessity. Two main orientations are present toward the user involvement into this topic, and in general are considering users or vulnerable customers or proactive users inside the energy communities or energy citizenship. Recent studies include in the first group of vulnerable users, for example, low-income families with children, elderly people, rented person, and people with unstable employment situation. But this concept seems to narrow the field of application to mere economic customers community, identifying people with economic and financial indicators and moving away from the concept of energy as a necessity and a basic human right. So an attempt to overcome this risk is to face the issues, extending the idea of energy to the concept of citizenship, meant as collective ownership and exercise of right. It is also important to consider that citizens are not all equal in front of energy consumption, because we can have very different energy patterns in relation with different people and different necessities. So the concept of energy citizenship is for us very interesting because it entails an approach that argues for the social necessity of public engagement and participation in processes of policy making and planning driven by the principles of local empowerment. And this definition urges the citizens to be involved not only in a personal change of their behavior as individual, but also in being proactive agents and providers of solutions to address at least part of this wide energy poverty problem. One of the forms in which, in our opinion, energy poverty and energy citizenship can express itself are energy communities. So they are introduced into the 2018 regulation, but in general, they are intended as a way in which people can share energy, usually produced by renewable sources, locally or not. And the involvement of citizens in these communities can be different, and we can have different degrees of complexities. But the very interesting aspect that I want to bring to you today is the role that citizens have in this typology of communities, as they become a new category of actors really engaged in the energy system with a new active role. Energy communities are now quite spread across Europe. This is just a graph on 24 case studies spread across 9 countries. But now this situation and these experiences are growing all around Europe. For going toward the conclusion, we think that the potential innovations linked with this topic are these 3. So the participation in such communities tend to be on an investment base, but it is possible to create new forms of engagement that doesn't require at the beginning an investment of people, in order to focus more on equity and social justice with a redistribution of values also to families that are not able to invest at the beginning in this typology of experiences. So the potential innovations on these fields are really relevant with the aim to create this new category of actors really engaged in the energy system. The combination of deep understanding of the multiple profile requiring the specific energy needs and the creation of experiences like energy communities can, in our opinion, really help in identifying new paths and strategies for tackling energy poverty at the urban level. So in conclusion, it is widely known that energy poverty emerged as determined by mainly three factors: income, energy cost, and building characteristics. But following the above mentioned strategies that focus on the role of the user as consumer and producers of solution, the challenge is to adopt new design approaches able to combine spatial issues, pathways with new services, new enabling technology, and new supportive management tools that allow the creation of positive circle of renovation and value redistribution. Also, in the post-pandemic world, we expect an increase of this phenomenon. So later or soon, we will really need to make efforts to address this phenomenon across Europe. These in this slide are some of the projects that are funded and in which we are working toward this topic. So we are part of the cost action on positive energy district, and we have two ongoing projects. The first one is Greta, that will start in May, so in a few weeks, that will really work on this topic of energy efficiency. We are working on this topic in a specific case study in Bologna, which is also a case study that we propose in our shared proposal of 2OC as one of the Italian case study. So I would like to thank you for this opportunity, and I am available to answer some questions if they are present in the comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Saveria. Please feel free to put questions in the chat bar. And now we're going to have a 13-minute short break. And afterwards, we will just reconvene back at 11:45 at 13 minutes. Thank you very much, and see you soon after the short break. Hi, I'd like to welcome back everyone. And I'd like to use this opportunity also to say hello to mom and dad and my sister and brother in Turkey. And a big shout out to friends in Mamçuka and especially Utku, who is serving in Kahta right now, before we move to the next presentation. Now, coming next from Poland is Magdalena Worsa-Kozak, who is going to talk today about the city experience. And the title is From the Black Hole to the Green Hills, the Road of the Wolfsbridge City to Climate Neutrality. Magdalena, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you. The floor is yours. Looking forward to it.
Hello, Burak. Hello, everyone. First of all, thank you, Burak, for coordinating this fantastic event of Sustainable Wednesday and for giving me the opportunity to take you all on a short trip back in time. We all know that we learn best from good examples, and I hope that the case of the city of Wałbrzych will be a worthwhile one, and you will see how the city could transform within 30 years, very, very nice way. Okay, so Wałbrzych is located in southwestern Poland, near the Czech Republic and German borders, in the Lower Silesian Voivodeship. A picturesque valley over which the wooded ranges of Wałbrzych mountains stretched out shapes the city's unique settlement, with an administrative border and area of 85 square kilometers and over 110,000 citizens. So it's a mid-sized city. It is a place with a long and a turbulent history, dating back to the beginning of the 12th century. Over the ages, the town passed from hand to hand between Czechs, Poles, and Germans. And in 1945, it became Polish city as for today. Since its beginning, Wałbrzych has been shaped by industry and also by mining. The first coal mining was recorded here in the first half of 16th century and lasted until 1990s. The exploitation of hard coal, coking coal, and anthracite, that was called black gold, has taken a heavy toll on the city and, of course, on the environment. Immense air pollution, persistent smoke, degradation of forest by acid rain, and black water flowing in the rivers. Such a black hole we had in the early 1990s. Difficult geological conditions, highly fractured deposit, the hazard of methane explosions and carbon dioxide emanation made exploitation inefficient and costly. And then came the worst, the economic crisis of 1990s that led to the closure of all the mines in the Wałbrzych district. The closure was unexpected, run without any social, without any economic, and without any environmental action plan or strategy. So we have a huge migration of people who lost their work day by day, ruined buildings, ruined infrastructure, and damaged environment, and pervasive poverty. This is a landscape of the city at the beginning of the 21st century, so 20 years ago. The situation began to improve when Poland joined the European Union, and of course, funds to support degraded areas became available. The first visible effects showed after 2010, when the city boosted application and started many actions and programs to fight against poverty and to improve quality of people's life. The city has implemented consecutively following programs. In 2014, a Green Wałbrzych 2020 program, and in 2015, low carbon economy plan for the city, and 2016 financial and planning tools in programming and implementation of the municipal revitalization program of the city of Wałbrzych. The program was called Rewitalizacja in Polish and was dedicated to renovate old buildings that was really damaged during these past years. And 2016 also led us to implement environmental protection program for the city. It didn't take long to see the first transformation effects from ruined to renovated and rediscovered, well-preserved industrial heritage. Very good example here is the multicultural center called Stara Kopalnia, Old Mine in English, that was transformed from an old mining area to a very nice center of the culture, of the history, and of the science. Despite the poverty had put the environment in the background, Wałbrzych was also one of the first cities in Poland that implemented the city climate change adaptation plan. Now it's time to look forward to the future and of course to take care of the future. That is why Wałbrzych prepared and submitted in 2020 the proposal, complete proposal for the project entitled Wałbrzych, a Green City of Opportunities, that was submitted at the second stage of call for proposals for local development program, financed by the EEA financial mechanism and the Norwegian financial mechanism. Within this program and within this proposal, two strategic documents were developed. One of these documents is the Local Development Plan, LDP, and Institutional Development Plan, IDP. LDP is focused on some activities related to climate and carbon issues. Among others, we have here establishing the Municipal Center for Social Activities to stimulate of eco-development of the citizens. The second one is ecological Wałbrzych, a kind of inventory of heat sources and air quality monitoring, and of course, a kind of inventory of polluted post-industrial and post-mining areas. And the third one activity is a City Lab Wałbrzych, creation of the Center of Innovation and Transfer of Novel Technologies. Moreover, in 2020, local governments officials from the whole subregion of Wałbrzych signed a declaration of decarbonization, and they declared that within 10 years, until 2030, the whole energy and the whole heat in the subregion will come from renewable energy sources. Wałbrzych has also begun the social plan for fair transformation of the subregion for 2021 to 2027. This plan includes projects that will compensate for the effects of abandoning coal mining and help to create a clean and environmental friendly economy, boost research and innovation activities, support the transfer of advanced technologies, and to develop a modern economy with, of course, a waste prevention and developing the circular economy. So yes, that's a long way to become a more green city, more sustainable city. Wałbrzych, as a post-industrial and post-communism city, had to face many environmental and many socioeconomic challenges that are still alive, despite 30 years from mining casing of this area. In Wałbrzych, there are still many dispersed carbon dioxide emissions, both natural and artificial origin. One of the natural sources that still causes some problems is the former coal mining area and the mine water that is enriched in CO2 and methane. This phenomenon is not well recognized yet and needs to be diagnosed and quantified to measure the city's carbon footprint and to develop a kind of ICT tools for predictions and of course for warning. Another critical problem is diffuse emission from fossil fuels that hitting industrial sites and households. The leading supplier of system heating does not cover even 50% of the city's needs. So the majority of energy used in local workplaces like Maastricht Special Economic Zone in West Park and households still comes from the combustion of fossil fuels. Another serious problem is the emission of air pollutants from technological sources of still operating coking coal factory that we can see right now on the movie. Despite performed investment and modernization activities taken by Victoria coking coal factory, it does not fully minimize the negative impact on the environment. All the issues mentioned above cause an excessive emission of greenhouse gases contributing to local environment pollution. But today, as we could see on the movie, thanks to active local government and the dedication of many people who love Wałbrzych, we can breathe fresh air, fishing in clean rivers, and walk through the beautiful forest of Wałbrzyskie Mountains. What you could see, and I hope that you will see in the future in person. A clear plan, a long-term strategy, of course, huge determination and boldness of local government. That's the recipe for a road from the black hole that we could see at the beginning of the 21st century to the green hills of Wałbrzych that we can see today. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope I didn't exceed the time for my presentation. Feel free to ask me any question and to contact me in case of any ideas for future cooperation. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Magda. It was a very nice presentation, also introducing the city. I also personally hope we can just visit one day, and I'm also looking forward to join the work on the projects that we're also developing in Limburg over carbon dioxide, and then also join forces on that one. I'd like to now give the floor to our next presenter, Gözlem Dittel from Aachen University, who is going to deliver a talk on innovative facade systems to increase urban climate neutralization. Gözlem, the floor is yours. Thanks for joining.
Thank you very much, Burak. Hello, everyone. My name is Gözlem Dittel. So I am a faculty member of the RWTH Aachen University in Germany, and working as a researcher at the Institute for Textile Technology. I am going to give you an overview about the research on innovative facade systems for urban climate neutralization. We look at the topic of climate neutral cities from an engineering perspective and search for textile-based technical solutions for the climate neutralization in cities. What contribution can textile technology make to climate neutralization of cities? As a starting point, I will cite some facts, figures, and data from Germany. Buildings account for 40% of the total energy demand in Germany and are responsible for 33% of the total CO2 emissions. A textile facade acts as constructive sunlight protection. As a result, up to 78% of the energy used for building cooling via air conditioning can be saved. I will explain how this textile facade cooling system works in the next slides. In addition, 62% of the buildings in North Rhine-Westphalia date from before 1978, the year of the first heat insulation ordinance. These are true energy guzzlers and climate sinners that need energy efficient renovation as quickly as possible. Textile facades also significantly improve the energy efficiency of existing buildings, protect the facade behind them, and form an acoustic barrier. The good thing in the renovation of existing building is that mostly good building structure inside is preserved. At the same time, however, the building is given a completely new and modern appearance. Installation on existing buildings is technically easy to realize and particularly useful. In principle, any building can be wrapped with textile facades, industrial buildings, offices, hotels, even parking garages. The textiles are pre-produced and the buildings can then be wrapped quickly. For residential buildings, for example, this takes a maximum of 2 weeks. What is actually a textile facade? It is not a completely new technology. Textile facades have been used in the building industry for over 40 years. Polyester fabrics with PVC coating or glass fabrics with other coatings are tensioned in front of the building envelope by means of a tensioning frame system. Most of the fabrics used for the facades have a degree of opening of about 28%. This degree of opening allows air and light to pass through. In a building with textile facade, it is hardly possible to look inside from the outside during the day. From the interior, on the other hand, the textile is hardly noticed because it is a microstructure. Beautiful examples of these are, for example, the SOS Kinderdorf, this children's village in Berlin, the Mikosta Hotel in Turkey, or the Fritz Lippmann Institute in Jena, Germany. With the reversal of the light situation, the appearance of buildings changes in the evening, while during the day, the building still appears sculptural, monolithic. In the evening, the building begins to shine from the inside out, so that only then does one perceive so what is inside the building. How exactly does this cooling system via textile facade work? Textile facades are placed in front of the thermal building envelope. There is an air cushion in the space between the textile and the actual facade. The curtain wall system in particularly interesting in terms of energy savings. Thus, the first contact with the energy intensive solar radiation takes place outside the building. The sunlight therefore first hits the textile membrane where it releases most of the thermal energy. At the same time, the layer of air between the textile and the building causes a convection current, like warm air flows upward and provides a natural heat dissipation. So meaning this thermal building envelope is passively cooled. This effect is really enormous. In calculation on an administrative building in Berlin, I think I already told you, it was shown that south-facing office space can save up to 78% in external cooling loads, just by having the envelope in front of it. In winter, the effect is reversed. This is because the air cushion then passively generates heat and protected by the textile fabric. The energy intensive solar heat does not penetrate the building in the first place. In addition, the distance between the textile facade and the thermal facade, meaning the actual building wall, creates a chimney effect. The warm air that forms behind and in front of the textile facade is drawn upwards. This is basically the case with any curtain wall, but the permeable fabric of the textile facades support the effect. So the climate in the city is thus improved overall because the heat does not accumulate. Textile facades can serve very different purposes. In February 2020, the world's first nitrogen oxide binding textile facade was inaugurated on the campus of the real estate company ECE in Hamburg. Made of polyester, the textile building envelope is attached again to the outside of the front brick facade to filter toxic nitrogen oxides from road traffic. In an interdisciplinary team of architects, eye specialists, textile, environmental, and electrical engineers, and my colleague, Dr. Jan Zerode at the ITA, has developed sustainable textile facades. So the team has placed various digital sensors at several positions on the facade to allow live monitoring. Thereby, two things are measured, the impact on the urban space and the impact on the interior of the building. Yeah. By the way, in Europe, more than half of nitrogen oxide emissions in the last years were caused by traffic. So the textile facade has a fine lattice structure and is translucent and visible. The air purifying effect is based on a coating with a photocatalytic effect. This causes the nitrogen oxides from the city air to be bound to the facade surface under UV light. Their oxidation processes convert the pollutants into small amounts of harmless salts. When it rains, the salt remains are washed off the facade surface and return to nature's natural cycle. The rainwater could also be used as fertilizer for plants. Samples were analyzed to scientifically prove the environmental compatibility. The tests showed that the conversion of nitrogen oxides also produces nitrate, which is toxic to humans and animals in high concentrations. For plants, on the other hand, it is an important nutrient and therefore suitable as a fertilizer. The nitrate concentrations in rainwater are absolutely low. Theoretically, you could even drink it. Jan has developed different variants with the architecture students to see how such a facade system could be coupled with a green facade, for example. In this case, the rainwater will be collected and used to irrigate plants that are integrated into the building envelope. This variant also releases further synergy effects, of course. In summer, it can reduce ambient temperatures in cities and thus counteract the harmful effect of urban heat islands. However, the photovoltaic facade is also particularly interesting because it is used to produce a solar shading system that can reduce the energy required to cool a building. It also creates a passive air conditioning effect between the textile and normal building envelope, but it is also possible to generate electricity with photovoltaic coatings on the textile facades. In the context of the global growth of megacities, as well as the simultaneously increasing importance of CO2 neutrality, this project Solar Power Text uses vertical building envelopes to generate renewable energy. The focus is the micro integration of photovoltaics for electricity and solar thermal energy for heat generation within the facade. Yeah, the performance characterization of the developed prototypes is carried out in the high-tech solar simulators of our project partners. All sun simulators achieve class A according to the European norm, German norm. Yeah, last thing, another innovative facade material, which is not directly related to the climate neutralization of the cities, but of the whole world, is textile reinforced concrete. This is actually my focus topic. It is clearly a product of the future because of its enormous CO2 savings potential. This is because textile reinforcement, which replaced the steel reinforcement, is non-corrosive, and we can build up to 80% thinner and lightweight concrete structures. because we do not need the thick concrete cover as for the steel reinforced concrete. Cement is a part of the concrete production process, and the industry produces a lot of CO2 during the energy intensive cement production. Since we can save up to 80% concrete in constructions with textile reinforcement, this also means 80% less CO2. That is already enormous. One example is our facade at ITA Machine Hall, for which we received Best of the Best Life Environment Project Environmental Award from the EU a few years ago. The building consists of 1.5 centimeters of textile reinforced concrete on both sides. This material can also play an important role in building renovation. One example is Aachen Cathedral, which was renovated with textile reinforced concrete in 2016. So I will wrap it up. So it is also possible to integrate other functions to the textile reinforced concrete elements, to integrate some sensors, or to integrate, as you can see here, some capillary pipes, for example, to create energy active roof elements, facade elements, etc. This was a short introduction, actually short overview from my side. If you have any questions, so I am ready to answer them here, or you can contact my colleague, Dr. Jan Zerode, or me when you want. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gözlem, for this very inspiring talk with so many different innovations. I'm very happy to hear all these very nice innovations, and I hope we can all see them more scaled up and mass produced all over the world in the coming few years, if not decades. Now, I'd like to thank once again to you, Gözlem, and then give the floor to Annika, Dr. Annika Grubel from EGLV. And then she's going to talk about the water in the city of tomorrow, like a title of a science fiction book. I'm really looking forward to hear your presentation, Annika. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Burak. I want to talk about water, and maybe it's a nice continuation of Jeremy's and also Magdalena's talks today. So with this picture, we can start in one of our projects. I will show you the next minutes. EGLV is the largest wastewater disposal company and operator of sewage treatment plants in Germany. And by the way, it is in a form of a public corporation. Genossenschaft, Emscher Genossenschaft means cooperative. So I want to show here the picture of Lake Phoenix in Dortmund, a former steelworks site, Hermannshütte by ThyssenKrupp. And it was flooded in the beginning of October 2010 and lasted for 1 year. And this new lake fulfills the function of a rainwater retention basin. In the next few minutes, I would like to briefly introduce you to our association and its task, and outline selected initiatives to illustrate where we see our fields of action for water-sensitive transformation of the region. And both rivers of our association and the catchment area, Lippe and Emscher, draining into the Rhine. So we are a bit more northern than the typical Ruhrgebiet everybody knows. The Emscher River is more urban influenced and the Lippe more rural. And you can see that here down in the corner by the residents per square kilometers, that the Emscher region is more populated. So our job is to keep an eye on the region's water flows and to ensure their purity. So we clean wastewater, renaturalize rivers, protect against floods, and take care of the eternal burdens of mining. So the rivers of our region have changed their faces several times. Originally, they were unregulated watercourses in rural areas, and the development of the Emscher region in the 19th century into a densely populated industrial area led to a sharp increase in the volume of wastewater. So with time, a real drainage emergency arose. And then the Emscher Genossenschaft was founded in 1899 to respond to the water management and hygiene problems. And its first major project was then the straightening, deepening, and embankment of the river, Emscher. So from the unregulated watercourses, we came up with open sewers in a densely populated industrial landscape. So the Emscher and its tributaries were regulated and lined up with concrete inverts and to ensure fast drainage. The construction of underground canals was not possible due to mining in that time. Therefore, the development of the watercourses into open sewers was an expedient solution at that time. Most of the waters in the Emscher region looked and also smelled like this for a long, long time. And at the beginning of the 90s, the vision of a holistic Emscher conversion grows as mining time and also ground settling was mainly completed. So the dream started to become an attractive watercourse again in a conurbation that is actively driving structural change. So the idea was to give the watercourse above ground more room for natural flow again and to guide the wastewater in a central channel as the normal system everybody knows. And this is how the largest water infrastructure project in Europe began 30 years ago. Today, the biggest tube you can see here is around 70 kilometers long, and the construction time for that was 6.5 years. The budget frame for the whole Emscher conversion was a bit more than 5 billion euros. And in that project, we built more than 400 kilometers of new sewers and more than 300 kilometers of revitalized water courses. And in the end of this year, we will have a big sewage-free celebration. Channeling wastewater into an underground canal creates new spaces for innovations above ground. So this is, we started a cross-community urban development project. It's called the Emscher Future Master Plan. And like a string of pearls, almost 3,000 individual urban and spatial projects were planned and implemented, like polder construction, rainwater retention, and so on. We promoted new governance structures to meet the challenges of this blue-green transition, what is mainly the biggest work and aim. One of the milestones during that period was in 2005, when we made a rainwater future agreement with the aim called 15 and 15, means 15% decoupling of rainwater in 15 years. In 2014, the Future Initiative Water in the City of Tomorrow was born together with the state of North Rhine-Westphalia and also all Emscher cities. And in order to bring topics such as water management, urban development, open space planning, urban development, climate adaptation and road construction closer together. And in 2020, we created the initiative Climate Resilient Region under a new joint guideline with a consensus for sustainable urban drainage. Specialty is also that all 16 Emscher municipalities take part in this, and also more of the Ruhr region. So with these initiatives, we do not speak of research projects anymore, as we are working on area-wide implementation. And it's not about individual beacons that work. We want to do it in the whole catchment area. So our ambitions are fixed, like, for example, the 25% decoupling of paved areas in 2040, or the 10% more evaporation we want to create. And all the actions we combine are elements of called sponge city. So, for example, the green roofs, we have initiatives for green roofs in Essen, or we are trying to use a lot of attractive design for rainwater infiltration systems like tree rigoles and so on. We raise about 250 million euros for the next 10 years to start the next project and to let them grow. So in the addition to water issues, what is our core business? We also try to combine our ambitions with aspects upgrading the attitude of life in the region, for example, by funding art or cycling, the infrastructure along our rivers, and in general, bringing more green and blue to everyone. It's a kind of ownership we try to generate by actions like My River or Joining the River and things like that. So this is a quick run from my side. I want to thank you for your attention and also give you the chance to get an exchange of innovations, ideas you have about the topic of water in the city. We're always open for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Annika, for this really fantastic set of things. It's been a lot of work, obviously, and then it looks really beautiful. And congratulations also in the work you have done, I'm sure. I'm really looking forward to the end of Corona and then visit that region too, one day to see all these walking paths too. Now, without further ado, I'd like to give the floor to my colleague, also Mark Sanders, who is going to talk about the Smart City Index and a classification scheme for projects and ventures. Mark, it's a great pleasure to have you. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Burak. It's a great honor and pleasure to be here, and a great conference so far. I always feel a little bit envious when I see all these really concrete projects where people are doing something to improve the world and our living environment. As an economist, we're typically a little bit further away from the daily practice and from getting things done and getting your boots on the ground and your hands dirty. But it's also, I think, important to collect data and see how all these initiatives and all these technologies and projects, how they add up at the city level, at the regional level, at the national level, even at the global level, if you're talking about CO2 emissions, how they add up, how that adds up to a total impact on the environment and or reduction of that impact. And so in collecting this data, we need to think about how we can classify these projects on various interesting and important dimensions. And I was involved in a project called IRIS on smart city development. And there we ran into the problem that it was not so clear how you would define, progress in terms of becoming more smart as a city. So we were looking for a way of classifying projects, initiatives, businesses on the, let's say, the degree to which they would contribute to the smart city development. And to my somewhat surprise, although it's a big and important topic also in the European grants and the 2OC consortium, it was not so clear to find a definition and an empirically implementable way of measuring this. So we basically had to start from scratch, do this ourselves. And I wanted to briefly present you with what we came up and see if you have any ideas on how to improve that, or whether you think it's a strange idea or makes sense. So what we did, let me go to the slides. What I want to do in this very brief pitch is basically tell you what we've done, what we learned from that, and then maybe discuss a bit where we might go from here. So what we've done is we basically we went to the academic literature, looked up what the smart city is, and then the assignment we had was to basically classify startups in 3 cities, Nice, Gothenburg, and Utrecht, as being contributors to smart city development, yes or no, and to what degree, if yes. So we basically went to the literature, looked at the definitions for what a smart city is, and then you find that there is quite a bit of heterogeneity, let's say, in that literature. There's a lot of definitions around. Some emphasize more the technological part, some emphasize more the urban part, some emphasize a lot the citizen engagement, some emphasize much more the sustainability. There's it's a mixed bag of definitions, But what we did based on these 73, let's say, definitions that we found is find out what are the elements that all the definitions more or less have in common, and then based on that develop an let's say a coding scheme that we could apply to these ventures based on the description of the ventures themselves. That was done manually. I'm guessing you could go for machine learning and AI in the distant future, but this was analog, but of course with cross-referencing and checking. And then we could code these ventures. The two necessary conditions are, well, you can't be a smart city if you're not applying your solutions in the urban context, and you can't be a smart city if you're not smart in the sense of using ICT-related technology to develop your solutions. But when you have passed these two necessary conditions, there's various ways in which you can increase the intensity of being a smart city. And we tried to capture that in an index that we defined as, well, the two necessary conditions multiplied, and then times 1 plus the sum of all the other aspects. And then that way you have a 1, 0 for if you fail the necessary conditions, and you can go up to a score of 5 when you achieve a 1 on all others. Now, then we coded the startups that we had collected, coded them in Gothenburg and Utrecht. We coded them in the Netherlands. We coded them in PACAS, which is an incubator in the Nice region in south of France. And we basically can show you the results here. We haven't done any very elaborate econometric analysis on this yet, but what you can see is that there is indeed quite a bit of variation across the different incubators. These are the numbers for Gothenburg and Utrecht. As expected, I guess, Climate Kick has quite a few that qualify as smart city. Whereas in the Utrecht Inc., which is a normal, let's say, business incubator without a specific focus on any area of development, has much less. Nonetheless, if you look at the scores, the intensity scores of the ventures that are being incubated, they don't really deviate that much between a specialized and a not so specialized incubator. So these are some interesting first results. There was also a data set for the Netherlands collected with much less observations per city. So I wouldn't put too much emphasis on these results. And interestingly, in France, an incubator also basically focused more on technology and collaboration between science and business, because it's a university-sponsored incubator. You see quite a few ventures that could be classified as contributing to smart city development at the average intensity of 3.2. Okay, so what we did this, and we're going to be reporting on it. We've published it as a working paper. And I think why it's interesting and why I wanted to pitch this idea is what we can do is, of course, we can try to explain these scores on the Smart City Index as the dependent variables. So what are the contributing factors to being more smart city oriented in your innovation policies and in your business incubation? You can also think about whether smart city, being oriented towards smart city development, explains other variables like well-being or health or the development of emissions in the city. You would expect that, but it remains to be seen, of course. You can also interpret it as a control variable. So the relationship between, for example, venture creation and economic growth is a big topic in the academic literature. It could be that smart city-oriented entrepreneurship has different impacts on the overall growth rate than non-smart city entrepreneurship. So that then you would use it as a control variable in something else that you're interested in. I think the index can be used in formulating policies. because it nicely aggregates. If you do this consistently across these cities, then you can aggregate it up to the regional level or the national level. Of course, huge effort to do so, but as you do more, you get better at it. And I also think that going back to the businesses, it can help you inform the businesses involved, but also especially also the services that are being provided for these businesses. So the incubation process, the financiers, the investors, you give them more information than they already have about the ventures that they're considering and that they're trying to help. So that in that it can be also very helpful. A final slide on the relevance maybe for 2OC. Of course, smart cities are clearly in the focus of what we're doing. But I think the method that we developed, so going to the literature, collecting all the definitions based on the definitions you find in a text analysis of that, you create the elements of what makes a smart city and then put that into a quantified number. That can also be used for other, let's say, fuzzy concepts like resilience, which is a topic I would like to bring into the 2OC consortium. But also we've heard about circularity. What is circularity at the city level, at the regional level, at the country level? These are all things that are difficult to grasp. They're easy to talk about as long as you don't define and try to measure them. Sustainability is also a famous, let's say, fuzzy concept that can be attached to a lot of things. And I think we would all benefit from getting a little bit more precise in what we actually mean by that, and trying to put also a number on that allows us to compare across cities, regions, and monitor the progress. Thank you.
Well, Mark, thank you very much. I mean, despite being a colleague and then working together all this time, I'm finally very happy to finally hear about a bit more in detail this smart city project that you were running. Thank you very much, and it was very inspiring. I'd like to slowly close the conference, and because it's been already time. Thank you everyone for joining, and thanks also for keeping a very nice, lively conversation. It was really a pleasure having organized this together with other colleagues, and Serdar have been a lot of help, who wasn't able to be here today, and also Sanae. And also in the background, there's Elma helping, and colleagues from marketing and communications such as Kendra, and also from our technical department, Walter and Krill. Also thanks to them. We keep in touch and stay tuned at our conference website, www.2oc.eu, and follow up for the further activities. Once again, thanks everyone. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.